Chapter 127. Bam, 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 bam. Second Uncle Qiao couldn't help but secretly rejoice as he knocked over several zombies along the way. Fortunately, Jojo was considerate and made the carriage the most comfortable and durable type. Thus, this carriage was built to be sturdy and wouldn't immediately fall apart even if it was hit multiple times by more than 10 zombies at the same time. When the carriage charged into the zombie horde, several zombies immediately pounced on Second Uncle Qiao. Arbor shot several arrows in succession and directly blew up the zombies' heads. After entering close combat, Arbor tossed the crossbow in his hand back and lightly leaped onto the left axle of the carriage. A black ferrule appeared in the palm of his right hand and released the light of mystic energy. Without any explanation, he smashed the heads of several zombies that were clinging to the side of the carriage and kicked them down. From time to time, the screams of old Lady Qiao and her daughter could be heard from the carriage. The little foodie finally woke up amidst these ear-piercing screams. She reached out to rub her eyes and looked at the window with a confused expression. Suddenly, a pair of stiff hands pierced through the window and a pair of deathly grey arms tightly wrapped around Qiao Wenjuan's neck. Old Lady Qiao let out a high-pitched scream. When Qiao Zhongbang saw this, he hurriedly smashed the zombie's arms with the crossbow in his hand. He smashed it several times, but the zombie didn't move an inch. On the other hand, Qiao Wenjuan's eyes were about to roll back from being strangled. Huan Whoosh! Xiao Yarrow protected Wei Ziqin and her daughter by her side and shot an arrow at the zombie's forehead from across the carriage, rescuing Qiao Wenhuan from her predicament. Qiao Wenhuan covered her neck with a sickly expression and coughed violently. Before she could recover from her shock, a loud explosion sounded. A zombie suddenly jumped down from the roof of the carriage and directly stared at Qiao Wenhuan. Ah! Qiao Wenhuan let out a blood-curdling scream and pushed her mother over without thinking. This push directly pushed her mother into the zombie's embrace. Crack! Old Lady Qiao's left leg was instantly broken by the zombie. She was trembling from the pain, but her eyes were filled with disbelief. At the critical moment of life and death, her own daughter actually pushed her out to die as a scapegoat. This was her youngest daughter whom she had doted on for more than 10 years, whom she had held in her hands and protected in her heart every day, whom she could not bear to let suffer the slightest bit of grievance. Mother! Qiao Zhongbang's pupils constricted. He threw the broken crossbow onto the zombie's head, raised his fist, and pounced. Don't come over here, don't come over here. Qiao Wenhuan kicked her legs and screamed as she moved to Wei Ziqin's side. At this time, half of the carriage's walls had already collapsed. Only Wei Ziqin, her daughter, and Little Tiger's side was still fine. Arbor had been guarding outside their carriage the entire time. No matter how many zombies rushed over, she would heavily sweep them down with her mystic energy. Stay Up Late had already released his mystical beasts to deal with the pursuers. Most of the corpse puppets were blocked by him and did not chase after them. This gave Arbor's group a chance to catch their breath. Xiao Yarrow stretched out her leg and kicked the zombie that was strangling the old lady. Xiao Yarrow reached out to grab Qiao Zhongbang. When she turned her head in a moment of distraction, she saw Qiao Wenhuan pouncing over to snatch Xiao Lin from Wei Ziqin's arms as if she had lost her mind. Younger sister, you. She saw Qiao Wenhuan fiercely tugging at Xiao Lin's arms and legs, trying to snatch the child away from her. She did not care if the child's arms and legs were about to be torn off. As the child cried out in pain, Wei Ziqin did not dare to snatch the child away from her. She loosened her grip slightly, and Qiao Wenhuan seized the opportunity to snatch the child away. What are you doing? Xiao Yarrow angrily shouted, her eyes filled with anger. Where? The slow foodie finally realized that she was scared. She kicked her short legs and tried her best to twist her body, repeatedly calling for her mother. Chapter 128. Keep me safe. I want you to keep me safe. Qiao Wenhuan fiercely ordered Xiao Yarrow. Her left hand hugged Xiao Lin while her right hand tightly gripped Xiao Lin's neck. Her face was distorted. Don't come over, or I'll strangle her to death. Don't come over. Qiao Wenhuan screamed at the top of her lungs, her entire body violently shaking along with the jolting carriage. It's all because you forced me. You forced me. You abandoned me and didn't care about me. You threw me into the zombie horde. This damned girl even said she wanted to feed me to the zombies. I'm telling you. Before I die, none of you should think about living. Qiao Wenhuan, let go of me. Qiao Zhongbang was both shocked and furious, and his voice changed. Do you know what you're doing? I know better than anyone else. Qiao Wenhuan gripped Xiao Liner's neck with a distorted face and sneered. I'm a trash that can be abandoned at any time. It's fine if Arba doesn't respect me, his little aunt, but even you, big brother, treat me like this. I'm telling you. If I die, Xiao Liner definitely won't live either. I demand that you immediately send me to a safe area. You can't let any of the zombies harm me. Wei Zichin was so angry that her face turned white, and she couldn't say a single word. What? Xiao Lin was uncomfortable from Qiao Wenjuan's strangling. She twisted her chubby body and tightly hugged her peach as she wailed loudly. Shut up. Qiao Zhongxing drove the carriage and finally rushed through the zombie horde blocking the road. He could only hear the whistling of the wind. At this time, his nerves had slightly calmed down and he also heard Qiao Lin's cries. At the same time, Arba was standing on the axle and looking at the forest road. The slow-moving zombies still persistently followed their carriage without giving up. Arba tightly gripped the ferrule in his hand and mobilized all the profound energy stored in his Dantian's mystic domain, including all the profound energy flowing in his profound veins. The originally listless sapling immediately discovered her abnormality and couldn't help but anxiously call out. Master, what are you doing? What you're doing will damage your profound veins. Arba's sleeves fluttered in the wind, but there was no expression on his little face. His deep eyes coldly stared at the group of zombies behind him. Master! The little tree's call was thrown to the back of her mind. At this moment, the surging profound energy in his body exploded out with a loud bang, and all of it condensed on the ferrule in his hand. Inky emitted a bright black light. At the same time, a gorgeous flame suddenly gushed out from the ferrule. Arba was stunned for a moment, but the flame was like a nimble snake. With a whoosh, it plunged into the group of zombies behind it. Bang! The corpse puppet that was touched by the flames immediately exploded into pieces by the raging flames. The entire carriage, because of Arba's ferocious profound energy, split open the walls of the carriage. This time, the carriage had completely transformed into an open-top handcart. Arba's cold gaze instantly landed on Qiao Wenhuan, who was choking Xiao Liner's neck. Qiao Wenhuan shuddered for no reason, only feeling that those serene eyes were as terrifying as ice. You're courting death. It was a nice soft voice, but it revealed a dense murderous aura, causing people to be endlessly terrified. The ferrule suddenly flew out of his hand and knocked away Qiao Wenjuan's arm, then flew back into Arba's hand. Arba leaped and reached out to grab the little foodie, stuffing her back into his mother's embrace. He kicked Qiao Wenhuan off the handcart and onto the ground. The carriage stopped. Arba's entire body charged towards Qiao Wenhuan like a cannonball, and his fist fiercely smashed into Qiao Wenjuan's stomach. Chapter 129. Qiao Wenhuan rolled on the ground and cried out in pain. Arba, you disrespectful little bastard. How dare you treat me like this? Arba did not give her a chance to protest. He punched her in the stomach twice. Qiao Wenhuan felt her organs burn and she spat out blood. Her face contorted even more, and she pointed shakily at Qiao Mu as she shrieked, you little beast. Bang! Arba raised his arm and punched Qiao Wenjuan's chin. Qiao Wenhuan could even hear the sound of her jaw cracking. She was sent flying backwards by a huge force, landing heavily on the ground and rolling for a while. She was on the verge of death and almost couldn't get up. I was fighting the zombies outside, but you held my sister hostage and stabbed me in the back. No team would want trash like this. Arba's voice was extremely cold. His eyes were so cold that they could shoot out ice blades. Qiao Wenjuan's actions reminded her of her so-called friend in her previous life. When they betrayed their teammates without hesitation, they did not have any psychological burden. Their hearts were already full of holes from greed, jealousy, and hatred. They did not have a conscience. Aoyi, Qiao Mu coldly called out as she stiffly stood there with her two small fists clenched. A black figure appeared beside her. Little mistress, please give me your orders. Throw this woman away. Don't let me see her again. Yes. Stay up late stepped forward and grabbed the back of Qiao Wenjuan's collar. He lifted her up easily. Qiao Wenjuan's eyes widened in shock. Her body trembled as she roared, "How dare you? How dare you treat me like this? How dare you? Big brother, second brother, mother, big brother, save me, save me. Arba wants to kill me. Mother, mother." It was not that the old lady did not hear her daughter's panicked cries, but she could not move because of her broken leg. She lay upright in the carriage, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Even now, she still hadn't recovered from the blow she had received. Qiao Wenhuan screamed and kicked the ground. She glared at Arba as if she wanted to stare a hole in her body. Stay up late knocked her on the back of her neck. Qiao Wenjuan's head drooped and she finally stopped screaming. Qiao Mu watched as Ao Yi picked up Qiao Wenhuan and disappeared into the distance in a few leaps. Only then did Qiao Mu retract her cold gaze and turn around just in time to meet her father's complicated gaze. I can tolerate naivety, stupidity, and even coldness. It doesn't matter. She did not care about them and could completely ignore them. Qiao Mu spoke with a calm expression, but Qiao Zhongbang kept feeling that his daughter's gaze seemed to have pierced through time and landed elsewhere. My bottom line is, at least when we are teammates, don't stab each other in the back. It's that simple. After saying this, Qiao Mu glanced at the convertible handcart. Second uncle said, Xiangyang town is just up ahead. It shouldn't be a problem to find some materials to build a simple cart. Then let's go. Qiao Zhongbang also jumped into the car and sat beside Qiao Zhongxing without saying a word. Qiao Zhongbang patted him on the shoulder. Qiao Zhongbang smiled bitterly. Second brother, I think little sister asked for it this time. He knew very well that if it wasn't for his daughter, Qiao Wenhuan would have died on the spot. Chapter 130. The open flatbed started moving, pulling a cart full of people into town. Xiangyang town and Anshan town were neighbors, and the two towns were about the same size. However, compared to Anshan town, which was completely empty, Xiangyang town could only be described as chaotic. As soon as the cart drove in, the entire street was filled with people looting and smashing. An elderly woman hugged a bag of rice to her chest and did her best to stop a burly man from snatching it, but she was slapped to the ground in the end. Several lost children were separated from adults and were wailing on the side of the street. How chaotic could the word chaotic be used to describe it? A middle-aged woman was pushed onto the flatbed cart. Her eyes fell on the pink, chubby peach in the little foodie's arms, and she immediately reached out to snatch it. The little foodie jumped in fright and cried out in her childish voice, "What are you doing? Robbery." The corners of Arba's mouth twitched with exasperation. He slapped the back of the woman's neck and kicked her crooked body off the flatbed cart. Second uncle drove the cart through the crowd. From time to time, someone bumped into the flatbed cart and was rudely pushed away by Arba. After the flatbed cart passed the main street and turned a corner, the chaotic situation became slightly better. Second uncle jumped out of the cart and picked up wooden planks from the side of the street. After organizing them a little, he built a simple shed on the collapsed cart to protect them from the sun and rain. The cart kept moving forward, the wheels rolling. Arba glanced at the elderly woman and saw her lying there in shock. She didn't react for a long time. The elderly woman's leg should be broken, but this town is in turmoil. There's probably no place to find a doctor. Wei Ziqin sighed. How about we go to the clinic to try our luck? Qiao Zhongbang muttered softly. Qiao Zhongxing shook his head. There definitely won't be anyone in the clinic. I reckon it'll be a wasted trip. Sister, this time the peach. Perhaps the incident with the middle-aged woman just now had made the little foodie feel threatened, so she planned to eat the peach. Arba didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he patted her little head. You eat it. He then took out a box of ointment from the bag and said to Wei Ziqin, Mother, support her. Jojo's medicine? Someone gave it to me. Arba skillfully set the old lady's bones. His movements were as smooth as water, causing everyone to be stunned. In fact, Arba also felt that it was very strange. It seemed that as soon as her hand touched the patient, her brain would automatically generate a treatment plan, and her hand would move freely. It was as if she had treated countless people's bones and applied medicine countless times. Jojo. Xiao Zhongbang never knew that his daughter's medical skills were so good, especially when the carriage was still moving. Jojo's gestures were so precise, it was simply incredible. Arbor lifted his stoic little face and chuckled at the dumbfounded people. You might not believe me when I say this, but I know a little about simple bone setting and bandaging. Qiao Zhongxing was a bit speechless. He glanced at his little stoic niece and really wanted to say, "Your proficient hand gestures are clearly not slightly exclamation point." Arbor furrowed her brows in vexation and chuckled again. For some reason, the three adults looked at each other in dismay and couldn't help but want to laugh. Actually, it would have been better if he hadn't chuckled. This child just had to let out a strange laugh, and his face was tense and motionless. It was completely out of place. After Arbor finished applying the ointment, she found a wooden board to hold the old lady's wound in place and couldn't help but glance at her again. She knew very well that the bone-setting process wasn't pleasant, but the old lady didn't even grunt the entire time. After Arbor finished treating her, the old lady lifted her head and nodded awkwardly at Arbor, either out of shame or shame. Chapter 131. After the carriages left Shenyang town, they sped forward. Everyone ate some dry rations in the carriages for lunch and casually made do with it. The closer they got to Shizhou City's official road, the more people gathered in a hurry. Presumably, people from the nearby villages and towns had all gathered in Shizhou City. When it was close to evening, Arbor's carriage arrived at Shizhou City's city gate. However, there was a long queue at the city gate, and Arbor's carriage followed behind the crowd. They were so far away that they could not see the end of the queue. "Looks like we'll have to wait for a while." Qiao Zhongxing pulled on the reins and slowed the horse down. The people in the queue were chatting with each other to inquire about the situation. When they learned that other villages and towns were also attacked by monsters at almost the same time, they could not help but hiss. "Why are they so slow? What's going on at the city gate?" A burly man with an annoyed expression roared impatiently. One of the two city guards in charge of maintaining order glared at him rudely. "If you don't want to wait, then scram. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" The burly man flew into a rage and threw a black tiger steals the heart at the city guard's chest. Unexpectedly, the city guard looked at him with disdain and threw a punch, which directly collided with the burly man's iron fist. When the two fists collided, the burly man let out a blood-curdling scream. The bones in his arm made a crisp cracking sound, and he flew backward like a kite with a broken string. There was a commotion behind the crowd. The people nearby all looked at the young soldier with reverence. A body cultivator. This person's strength was different from ordinary people. No one expected that an ordinary city guard in Shizhou City would be a body cultivator. The other city guard raised his voice and shouted, "Everyone, line up properly. You're not allowed to cause trouble. Those who cause trouble will be stripped of their right to enter the city. Sir, can you inquire about what's going on in front?" Qiao Zhongxing asked with a smile. The first city guard who was beating the burly man glanced at Qiao Zhongxing indifferently. When his gaze landed on Arbor, he could not help but pause on her cold little face for a moment. He did not expect that there would be such a beautiful and elegant little girl in the nearby village. She was so cold that she did not seem like a living person. The little girl was half leaning and half sitting on the side of the carriage. She was aloof from worldly affairs and was as graceful as the wind. She was completely incompatible with the hustle and bustle around her. "Sir!" Second Uncle Qiao turned back to look at his stoic-faced little niece before cautiously calling out to the city guards. Perhaps seeing that Second Uncle Qiao's attitude wasn't bad, the city guard glanced at him and said, "He's testing, so his speed is a little slow." The city lord said that every person entering the city, regardless of gender or age, must undergo a test to screen out mystic cultivators or people with special abilities. Test. This time, it was as if a chatterbox had been opened. The surrounding women all asked at once, "Is it because the selected mystic cultivators receive better treatment after entering the city?" Of course. Guarding the city requires people with special abilities, and mystic cultivators are even better. The city guards were more lenient towards the women. They nodded and explained, "You also need to hand over some supplies to enter the city. The more you hand over, the better your treatment." Ah! Hearing that they had to hand over their things, everyone wailed and subconsciously clutched their bags tightly. Ah, what? The city guards looked at the old man who shouted the loudest with disdain. "Everyone needs to work together to defend the city. You normal people only need to hand over a portion of your resources. Mystic cultivators still need to scan their inner worlds, so they have to hand over more than you." Scan their inner worlds. Arbor raised a brow as an ominous feeling surfaced in her heart. Chapter 132. May I know how to scan the inner world? Qiao Zhongxing glanced at Arbor, who was pulling a long face, and asked subconsciously. "Our city lord has an ancient mystic mirror. You just need to scan it." The soldier waved his hand impatiently. "You're not a mystic cultivator, so why are you asking so much? Line up properly and don't cause trouble." Arbor sat in the carriage, deep in thought. She had a lot on her mind. It could actually scan the inner world. She didn't enter Shijiao City in her previous life, so she didn't know about this. Thinking about her inner world that was filled with jewels and treasures, the little fellow felt faintly distressed. Would she be burned as a monster if she scanned her inner world like this? However, it was unrealistic to turn back now that they were already at Shijiao City's gates. "Master, what are you worried about?" The sapling sensed her emotional fluctuations and suddenly spoke in her mind. "You've recovered?" Arbor was slightly taken aback and secretly communicated with the sapling. "No." Chocho sighed heavily. "But I can feel Master's anxiety." In fact, Arbor wanted to ask the sapling about her medical skills. She had a layer of suspicion in her heart now. Perhaps she really did learn medicine from someone. However, seeing how weak it was when it spoke, she decided to forget about it. In any case, that matter wasn't urgent. What she was anxious about now was how to deal with the matter of scanning the inner world. She briefly explained the matter to the sapling, but the sapling remained silent. On the other hand, the troops kept moving forward and were clearly moving faster. She reckoned that there were more people at the city gates. "This scammer. Say something." Seeing that the city gates were right in front of them, Arbor rolled her eyes at the sky. Just when she thought the little scammer had fallen asleep again, Chocho's voice finally sounded faintly. "Master, what do you think the golden talisman jade tome is? Do you think it can only teach you talisman spells? Is your inner world something that can be scanned by any random cat or dog? Even a super mystic cultivator 18 levels higher than you can't forcefully scan your conscious, let alone that ancient mystic mirror." Why was little Master worried about this? "Hehe, so it's like that." "I really don't know." Arbor rubbed her nose awkwardly. "Master, you're actually really strong," Chocho said leisurely. Arbor chuckled. "I'm very strong. Even I almost believed it myself." The carriage followed the instructions of the city guards and stopped at the side. The soldier went forward to check and saw an old lady with a broken leg lying in the car. There were no other supplies, so he didn't make things difficult for her. The Arbor family lined up behind a young couple. The couple looked a little nervous, and the woman held the cloth bag tightly in her arms. There was a table on the left side of the city gate. A scribe was sitting there with a brush in his hand. He didn't even raise his head. "What's your name? Does a mystic cultivator have any special abilities?" The couple shook their heads repeatedly. "Wang and Shi Mai." The scribe raised his head and glanced at them. "Is your family going to hand over supplies?" Can I not?" Shimai asked timidly. The scholar nodded. "All right. However, once you enter the city, you will have to make a living on your own. The city lord's mansion will not distribute any resources to you. There are free tents for you to stay in," the scholar added. The couple nodded repeatedly. "We won't hand them over. We'll just stay in the free tents." The scholar nodded and gave them a meaningful look. He handed them a bamboo tablet with their names written on it, and the words inferior were engraved on the back. The soldiers standing on both sides called out, "Next." Chapter 133. Qiao Zhongbang stepped forward and reported his name, then said, "The people behind are all my family members." The scholar nodded and glanced at him. "Go over and take the test." Qiao Zhongbang looked in the direction the scholar pointed at. There was a transparent crystal ball quietly placed on the long table. He couldn't help but smile wryly. "Sir, there's no need to waste time on the test. I'm just an ordinary person." The soldier beside him said impatiently, "Just take the test if I tell you to. Why are you talking so much? Why don't the couple in front need to be tested?" Arba's soft childish voice contained a trace of coldness. The soldier glared over, scaring Wei Zichin into subconsciously opening her arms and pulling Arba into her embrace to protect him. The scholar reached out to block the soldier. He wasn't angry and looked at Arba with a very gentle gaze. "Little kid, the couple in front looks like ordinary people at a glance. They don't have a trace of mystic energy on them." His voice paused, and he suddenly fixed his gaze on Arba. "Little kid, come and take the test." Arba shook his head expressionlessly. "I'm just an ordinary child." "Hey, little girl, do you not understand Sir Zhong's words?" the soldier shouted in an unpleasant tone. "What's wrong? What happened?" A cyan figure walked over accompanied by several white-robed men. The scholar immediately stood up and saluted. "Greetings, City Lord, and several young masters from Daybreak Sect." City Lord Jiyu Qingfeng nodded slightly. "Testing." His gaze flitted over Qiao Zhongbang and the others. "Hey, look, quickly look. Who am I looking at? Isn't this our fifth junior brother?" A white-robed man suddenly spoke with a hearty laugh. This person was about the same age as Qiao Zhongbang. He looked to be around 30 years old, but he looked younger than Qiao Zhongbang. His appearance was very ordinary, and there was a hint of mockery at the corner of his mouth, making his entire appearance lean toward harshness. "How come I've never heard of some fifth junior brother? Eldest senior brother, did you recognize the wrong person? Third senior brother, your memory is really bad. Wasn't this fifth senior brother praised by Master earlier for having comprehension comparable to eldest senior brothers? Such a pity. In less than 2 years, this fifth senior brother's cultivation was crippled and his Shen meridians were destroyed. After that, he was expelled from the mountain by Master. TSK, I really didn't expect to meet you in Shizhou City. What a coincidence. Yo, why is our once high-spirited fifth junior brother aging prematurely? It hasn't been more than 10 years. I'm so old that I almost can't recognize you." 3 young men in their 20s were dressed in the same style of white robes, with a circular symbol embroidered on their sleeves and chests. They surrounded their eldest senior brother, flattering him as much as they could while trampling Qiao Zhongbang to death. Qiao Zhongbang froze the moment eldest senior brother opened his mouth. When those people finished mocking him, Qiao Zhongbang walked back to his family's side without a word. "Ha ha ha." The people from Daybreak Sect laughed impudently. Suddenly, she was interrupted by a soft child's voice. "You're as long-winded as a group of ducks. Are you done with the registration? After registering, we're leaving." The laughter of the people from Daybreak Sect abruptly stopped. They all looked at Arba in disbelief, as if they didn't understand where this child got the guts to speak to them with this kind of tone. The scholar hurriedly took out a bamboo tablet and wanted to hand it to Arba. "You guys go ahead." Arba glanced at him and was about to reach out his hand. Unexpectedly, a burst of mystic energy shot out from the side and directly swept the bamboo tablet to the ground. One of the white-robed young men glanced at Arba's family with a spurious smile and immediately lifted his robe to take a horse stance. "Fifth senior brother, it's fine if you want to go, but you have to go through here." Ha 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 ha. The other people from Daybreak Sect laughed nastily. Chapter 134. Jiomingren, don't go too far. Qiao Zhongbang tightly clenched his fists, his nails digging into his flesh without him noticing. "Sixth junior brother, you're being naughty again, aren't you?" That eldest senior brother said with a chuckle, not having the slightest intention of stopping him. Jiomingren smiled knowingly and pointed at his crotch even more brazenly. "Fifth senior brother, are you going to pass or not?" Arba's gaze hardened, and he pushed away his mother's hand and directly walked toward Jia Mingren. Everyone was startled. City Lord Jiu Qingfeng stood to the side and glanced at the Daybreak sect people with disapproval. Little girl, you want to take the blame for your father? Jia Mingren looked at Arba with a strange smile. That's not impossible, but... Arba walked in front of Jia Mingren without saying a word. Without waiting for him to finish his sentence, he suddenly threw out a rope and wrapped it around one of Jia Mingren's legs. He withdrew his hand and tightened his grip on the rope. In his shock, Jia Mingren's left leg was pulled by the rope and he took a big step forward, forcing him to do a split. Fuck, his crotch immediately hurt. Jia Mingren screamed miserably. Arba took out his ferule and fiercely hit him on the head. He angrily rebuked, "What are you screaming for? Shut up." Not far away, the slender purple figure who had been standing at the city gates to watch the show shuddered slightly and thought, this little girl seems to be even scarier. Even he didn't dare to casually provoke this savage darling, so how could this group of cowards dare? What are you doing? Daybreak sect's eldest senior brother finally reacted and shouted on the spot. If you come over here, I'll slaughter him. Xiao Mu coiled the rope in her hand around his neck and lifted him up by one leg. This time, it was tragic. Sixth junior brother's leg made a crisp cracking sound, and his entire body trembled in pain. Arba switched to a dagger and pressed it against Jia Mingren's waist. He raised his eyebrows and said to the pale-faced eldest senior brother, "Step back 3 feet. Eldest senior brother, save me." Jia Mingren howled. However, the other people from Daybreak sect felt their faces burning, especially when they saw City Lord Jiu and the others' strange gazes. They inwardly cursed this useless sixth junior brother of theirs. He couldn't even deal with a child, yet he had the face to cry out in pain. Eldest senior brother? A lazy voice sounded in everyone's ears. As a tall purple figure slowly walked over, the youth's pilously handsome appearance gradually appeared in front of everyone. Why do I remember that I defeated you 2 days ago? Shang Kuan, do you have a bad memory? According to the rules, I'm senior brother now. The young man winked at the stiff-faced eldest senior brother, his pair of devilish peach blossom eyes revealing traces of a smile. Senior Arba SS. Xiao Mu's gaze landed on the young man's arm. As soon as he spoke, Xiao Mu did not need to turn around to know that it was that youth. Duanyu TT SSTTTATTSS quickly kill this damn girl. With one leg tied to his body, Jia Mingren lost his balance and fell to the ground. Arba brutally dragged him for a while, causing him to wail in pain and repeatedly beg for help. Arba stepped on Jia Mingren's head and rolled his ankle. He looked up and coldly glanced at Duanyu. Compensate. Otherwise, I'll kill him. Everyone. Duanyu's mouth twitched. He just knew that this damn brat couldn't be judged with common sense. Kill him then. He's so stupid, so he deserves to die. Arba raised his leg and kicked at Jia Mingren's throat. Duanyu's eyelid twitched. Wait. Friends, more tomorrow. Chapter 135. What compensation? Duanyu was a bit sullen. He felt like nothing good happened every time he met this imp. Fixed price. 100 low-grade magnetite for this wretched life, Arba said dryly. The Daybreak sect disciples looked at Arba as if they were looking at a monster. 100 low-grade magnetite? This child really dared to demand an exorbitant price. Her guts were outrageous. Second junior brother, what do you think we should do? Duanyu directly threw the question to Shang Kuan. When Shang Kuan heard the word second junior brother, his brows involuntarily twitched. Eldest. Second senior brother. A Daybreak sect disciple hastily corrected himself. You can't give it to her. All right then. He's with you guys anyway. Second junior brother, take junior brother Jia's corpse back to see the sect master. Remember to explain properly. Duanyu turned to leave after saying this. Eldest senior brother, wait. Shang Kuan awkwardly stopped Duanyu. How about we pool our money together and redeem junior brother Jia first, then think of a way to kill this child. Shang Kuan looked at Arba with a cold glint in his eyes, and his voice deepened. He would take revenge for this humiliation. Duan Yu was alarmed and was about to berate this brainless guy when he saw a cold glint in Arba's eyes. Kill him. Following this abrupt order, a black figure pounced down from the sky, and a vast mystic energy landed on Shang Kuan's chest. Shang Kuan felt pain in his chest, and he was sent flying. He crashed heavily onto a nearby table and spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes turned pale with shock. The table was smashed in half, and the scholar hastily got up and retreated. Jiyu Qingfeng and the other Daybreak sect disciples revealed a trace of shock in their eyes. They were well aware of Shang Kuan's cultivation. He was a level 6 mystic cultivator and an outstanding figure among the younger generation. But now, he was no match for the black-clothed youth who suddenly appeared. Aoyi dashed forward and was about to give Shang Kuan another stab when Duan Yu quickly stopped him. 500 low-grade magnetite for these two idiots' lives. Aoyi. The black-clothed youth quickly retreated to Arba's side. 600 yuan is too expensive. Those two idiots aren't worth this price. Duan Yu blinked his watery peach blossom eyes and grinned mischievously. 500 yuan plus a kiss. What do you think? Young man, who do you want to kiss? Stay up late's eyebrows twitched. He suddenly had a bad feeling. Your Highness, you're in danger. 500 it is. It's indeed worthless, the little stoic said coldly. Of course she didn't want a kiss. Duan Yu summoned a bag and handed it over with a grin. You're Jojo, right? Speaking of which, we're really fated. Arba took the items and turned to walk towards his parents, leaving the dumbfounded teenager behind. Bao Bao wasn't done yet. You really have to change your bad habit of talking for a long time when you haven't even spoken 3 sentences. Otherwise, you won't have any friends. Duan Yu was so angry that he directly turned around and angrily shouted at Shang Kuan, who had just crawled up from the ground, return 500 low-grade magnetite to me tomorrow. Shang Kuan abruptly fell to the ground again and bitterly said, eldest senior brother, I don't have that many magnetite. Duan Yu had nowhere to vent his anger and angrily rebuked Shang Kuan, I don't care if you have it or not. You steal it, you rob it. You must return it to me tomorrow. Otherwise, I'll kill you. Little miss, why don't you also take the test? If your family has 2 mystic cultivators, the City Lord's estate will provide you with a decent residence. You only need to complete 1 mission every month, and you can continue living there for free. Chapter 136. Without compensation, the little stoic asked expressionlessly. The scholar's mouth twitched. He instantly understood her meaning and hastily replied, with compensation. All the rewards from the missions will belong to you. It's the monthly residence rights for high-class residential areas. Every household has to complete a level 3 mission or above once a month to exchange for it. Right now, the better houses in the city are concentrated in the east and center of the city. Priority will be given to mystic cultivators or people with special abilities. As for other normal people, even if they have spare money, they can't buy a house in a better place. Got it. So be it. They were a big family, and Arba also wanted everyone to live in a slightly better place. After all, she didn't know how long they would have to stay here. Walking to the table where the crystal ball was placed, Arba naturally placed her small hand on it. She had tested this kind of mystic energy test before. She only needed to inject a wisp of mystic energy, and layers of white mist would quickly surface from the bottom of the transparent crystal ball. Normal people wouldn't have any reaction when touching this crystal ball. Only mystic cultivators could awaken the mystic energy inside this crystal ball. This crystal ball's interior just so happened to be divided into 15 layers, representing the highest level of mystic energy. At this moment, 4 layers had already lit up between Arba's fingers. When she put down her small hand and turned around, she saw Jiyu Qingfeng and the others' astonished gazes. A level 4 mystic cultivator, the scholar murmured and reflexively wiped his eyes. She really was a mystic cultivator. It seemed that his eyesight was pretty good. No wonder he felt a bit strange when he first saw this child. The scholar couldn't resist chuckling. Little fellow, you are the youngest mystic cultivator I've seen in all these years. City Lord Jiyu also walked up with a hearty laugh. That's great. Our Shizhou city just happens to need all the mystic cultivators and body cultivators to join us and jointly build an indestructible city defense. Ien, my second uncle is a body cultivator. Arba spoke indifferently and extended a hand toward the scholar. Just give us a small, quiet courtyard. Don't forget to make up for all the furniture. Jiyu Qingfeng's mouth twitched, and he glanced at the child in spite of himself with a smile. He nodded and said, Of course, of course. Mr. Zhong, arrange for them. Miss Chiao's family to live in the residence in Pear Blossom Alley. It's also closer to the City Lord's mansion. If you don't have anything to do, Miss Chiao is welcome to visit the City Lord's mansion. Such a young level 4 mystic cultivator was truly too rare. He was either a genius or a genius. Jiyu Qingfeng was very happy to befriend him. The people from Daybreak sect who were tossed aside all had very unsightly expressions. Especially Jiao Mingren, whose leg was broken by Arba, his eyes were filled with disbelief. He himself was only a level 4 mystic cultivator, so he knew how much effort he had put in to reach this height. But now, this little girl who looked no more than 7 or 8 years old, she actually got this kind of terrifying talent really made people want to break it. There was jealousy in Jiao Mingren's eyes. A Daybreak sect disciple suddenly said, Why you child, why haven't you released junior martial brother Jiao after taking the magnetite? Arba's small hand shook lightly as he pulled back the rope. At the same time, he suddenly flew up and kicked Jiao Mingren's crotch. In that instant, many of the men present abruptly tensed up and felt a bit unwell. Jiao Mingren maintained a strange sitting posture and was sent flying by the girl's kick. He didn't even have the chance to howl before he fainted from the pain, and so on and so forth. Chapter 137. Duan Yu simply didn't know what to say. Compared to Jiao Mingren's infinite misery, he suddenly felt very touched. Little Miss was so friendly to him before. As expected, it all depended on one's looks. A certain youth, who felt good about himself, wasn't angry at all and even looked at the child with a grin. The stoic face was expressionless and only glanced at him strangely before retracting her gaze. She thought to herself, there might be something wrong with this youth's brain. She just kicked his junior brother Jiao so hard that he fainted, yet he can still smile at her. This reaction wasn't normal, right? Shang Kuan's flustered and exasperated expression was normal. Arba's gaze shifted to Shang Kuan and the others and asked good-naturedly, Do you also want someone to crawl under you? Shang Kuan and the others froze and shuddered for no reason before retreating a few steps. Arba remained calm and unruffled. If not, then we're leaving. Wait. A youth next to Shang Kuan blocked the carriage with a sullen expression. Did City Lord Jiyu forget something? As a mystic cultivator, don't you need to scan your inner world and hand over some supplies? Jiyu Qingfeng was a bit embarrassed. Especially when he saw Arba looking at them like they were beasts, Jiyu Qingfeng was truly speechless. Jiyu Qingfeng laughed awkwardly. Young Master Li, the little girl is so young, so she shouldn't have many things in her inner world, so she doesn't need to scan it. How can that be? Rules are rules. City Lord Jiyu, you're wrong to say that. If everyone is like the little girl, shirking their age and not scanning their inner world, wouldn't the city lose a lot of supplies? Li Xiong said sternly with a cold face. Shameless. Arba harumphed. You even want to snatch a baby's things? You're an adult in vain. Jiyu Qingfeng. Hurry up if you want to scan. A bunch of men, all of you are so wishy-washy, so boring. What should he do if he really wanted to beat this child to death? Why was her speech so unpleasant to the ears? The people from Daybreak sect were so angry that their faces turned green. However, when their gazes landed on the youth in black next to the child, they didn't dare to move. After all, the strength that the black-clothed youth had just displayed was something that even their second senior brother, Shang Kuan, had to suffer. How would the others dare to go up and throw their lives away? Jiyu Qingfeng braced himself and ordered someone to bring over the ancient mystic mirror. He forced a smile at Qiao Mu. Miss Qiao, there's no need to be nervous. The ancient mystic mirror scanning your inner world won't cause you any harm. It'll be over soon. You just have to stand there without moving. Let me. Daybreak Sect's Li Xiong directly snatched the ancient mystic mirror from Jiyu Qingfeng's hand and strode forward to Arbor, saying coldly, I'll say the ugly things first. If you recklessly use your Xian consciousness to resist, don't blame me if your Xian consciousness is damaged by the ancient profound mirror. If even a single hair on my body is harmed, I will use your lowly life to compensate for it. Arbor spoke softly, his gaze fixed on Li Xiangshe. The latter felt as if all the blood in his body had been frozen, and he couldn't say a word. Clang! The black-clothed youth drew his sword in response, looking as if he was about to attack at any moment. Amidst the tension, Jiyu Qingfeng hastily stepped forward to smooth things over. This city lord should personally scan the little girl's inner world. He felt so bitter. The little girl didn't look easy to bully, so why did Daybreak Sect still have to go against her? No need. Li Xiong stubbornly pushed away Jiyu Qingfeng's arm, furious that he was intimidated by a little child's aura. Many people gathered at the city gate. Many commoners expressed great curiosity when they heard that a mystic cultivator who was only 7 years old was going to scan the inner world on the spot. Chapter 138. She was clearly such a small child, but Li Xiong didn't dare to look into her eyes. He felt that those demonic pupils were like an icy abyss. If he wasn't careful, even his soul might be sucked in. He gripped the mirror tightly and took a deep breath. He couldn't help but secretly laugh at his nervousness. Wasn't she just a level 4 mystic cultivator? She was just a little younger and more talented than normal people. Could it be that she could cause trouble? Damn girl, it's time to let you have a good taste. He raised the ancient mystic mirror and abruptly channeled a large amount of mystic energy into it. With a sneer on his lips, he aimed the mirror at the little girl's forehead. Wei Ziqin, Qiao Zhongbang, and the others' hearts were hanging high, and a trace of nervousness appeared in their eyes. Normal people couldn't see it, but mystic cultivators could. A thick milky white halo shot out from the mirror and directly transmitted into Arbor's conscious at lightning speed. Young Master Li! Jiyu Qingfeng cried out in shock. Li Xiong was going to destroy the little girl's conscious. Why would a normal scan of the inner world require so much mystic energy? This Li Xiong. Jiyu Qingfeng's pupils contracted, and he cursed inwardly. Just as everyone thought that they would soon be able to admire a young mystic cultivator's inner world through the ancient mystic mirror, Li Xiong suddenly screamed. Li Xiong suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream. The ancient profound mirror in his hand suddenly exploded. The fragments were instantly crushed into powder by a terrifying force, wantonly flying everywhere. Whoa! Li Xiong fell heavily to the ground with his limbs in the air and spat out a large mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with boundless terror as he looked at the child who stood silently in front of him without even moving an inch, as if he was looking at a ghost. You! Li Xiong raised his hand with great difficulty and pointed shakily in the child's direction. You're conscious. There's. Fart. Li Xiong spat out another mouthful of blood, and the blood actually contained fragments of his internal organs. Junior Marshal Brother Li. Shong Kuan cried out in horror and raised his hand to help Li Xiong up. Li Xiong clutched Shong Kuan's sleeve tightly and said intermittently, Senior Marshal Brother, don't provoke this little. He tilted his head and didn't make another sound. Shong Kuan's eyes were filled with horror as he checked his breathing. He was already dead. Junior Marshal Brother Li. Another Daybreak Sect disciple pounced over and touched it with his hand. Astonishment appeared in his eyes. All the bones in Junior Brother Li's body shattered into pieces in an instant. Without the support of his bones, he collapsed like a deflated ball. No one knew what had happened, and even Xiao Mu was dumbfounded. The mystic cultivators couldn't understand it, let alone the normal people watching. They saw Li Xiong inexplicably fly backward by himself, and then he died on his own. The only similarity was that everyone was looking at Arbor as if they were looking at a monster. Not only was the ancient mystic mirror unable to reflect the child's inner world, but it was also shattered into powder. That wasn't all, but the Daybreak Sect disciple who wielded the ancient mystic mirror actually lost his life because of it. One had to admit that this was very terrifying, alright? Do you still want to sweep? When the soft voice drifted into everyone's ears, everyone shook their heads in unison like a rattledrum. Sweep your grandma? That person was already swept to death by you. Who would dare to sweep your inner world with such savagery? Only those who didn't want their lives would look. Then let's go. Arbor jumped onto the carriage and kicked out a pair of small shoes. He said in a soft and cute voice, "Mom, my shoes are dirty." Okay. Mom will change a pair for you." Everyone watched as the carriage drove into the city and collectively lost their ability to speak. Why did Daybreak Sect's Lee Seong die? No one knew. Chapter 139. Thud, thud, thud. The carriage drove into the city and headed toward Pear Blossom Alley. Qiao Zhongxing drove the carriage the entire way. Even now, he was still a bit confused and couldn't figure out what had just happened. Actually, even Arbor himself didn't understand what had happened, let alone the rest of the Qiao family. Daybreak Sect's Li Xiong had died mysteriously and strangely. Arbor couldn't figure it out no matter how much he thought about it. Qiao Zhongbang coughed twice and couldn't help but ask, "Jojo, that youth just now was him?" That youth fled and disappeared as soon as he entered the city, and everyone had seen his strength for themselves. Qiao Zhongbang was very clear about Shang Kuan's strength. When he left Daybreak Sect, Shang Kuan was a level 4 mystic cultivator. After that, Shang Kuan advanced 2 levels in 15 years. For most people, this was a normal advancement speed. But for those with outstanding talent, it was absolutely tortoise-like speed. However, the disciples that Daybreak Sect had accepted in recent years all seemed to have very mediocre aptitudes. It could be said that Qiao Zhongbang back then was considered one of the more outstanding ones among Daybreak Sect's younger generation. Unfortunately, he was expelled from the sect in less than 2 years. Arbor withdrew his gaze from his father's face and casually replied, "He will follow us. This youth's cultivation is extremely high and extraordinary. Why did he follow us?" Qiao Zhongbang asked in puzzlement. Qiao Mu very naturally followed up, "He paid the fee." Qiao Zhongbang was a bit dumbfounded. Was he stupid? Why did it feel like he was speaking to his eldest daughter in a completely different world? Qiao Hu hastily interjected and added, that Big Brother and Xiao Yaro both paid a large sum of food and lodging fees and volunteered to follow eldest sister as her subordinate. Eldest uncle, you don't know, but eldest sister is really too amazing. As Qiao Hu spoke, he revealed an expression of adoration. What do you mean? Qiao Zhongbang was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped to the ground. If they didn't pay the food and lodging fees, then eldest sister will definitely not take them in. Qiao Hu looked at his uncle as if he was looking at a fool. How could his uncle not understand such simple logic? He was even less sensible than a child. What a joke. Qiao Zhongbang's mouth twitched. His nephew's expression made him want to slap him on the head. A great mystic cultivator whose strength far surpassed Shang Kuan's actually had to pay a fee to follow his daughter. How could others endure this? At this very moment, His Excellency Great Mystic Cultivator Ao Yi, who Qiao Zhongbang was talking about, was hiding behind a roof and stealthily taking out a palm-wide pure white jade talisman from his pocket. If Arbor was here, he would be able to tell that this jade talisman was carved on jade using the most authentic talisman technique. This was a communication jade talisman, which was rare even in Guanlan City. Aoyi took out a special jade brush and wrote a line of words on the jade talisman. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, this is bad. A youth from the Daybreak Sect has appeared and seems to be trying to steal your woman." After that, he wrote a bunch of random words. Something like the Daybreak Sect youth insisted on giving Darling Qiao a kiss, but Darling Qiao sternly refused, and so on. He even deliberately described Darling Qiao's stoic face. If Arbor saw what Aoyi wrote, he would definitely be so angry that he would send him flying with a kick. After writing over 1,000 words, Aoyi put away his brush as if he hadn't had enough. He looked up at the sky not far away and sighed with a hint of sadness. "Your Highness, this subordinate can only help you up to this point. Where are you going to find a subordinate who is so conscientious in his duties?" Chapter 140. Arba didn't know that Aoyi had secretly sent a message to the Crown Prince. She was currently trying to communicate with the sapling mentally. She felt that Li Xiong's death was very strange. It would be best if the sapling knew what happened. Cho, do you know what happened just now? The sapling didn't make a sound for a long time. Arba waited for a while, but seeing that it didn't move, she could only sigh slightly. She knew she couldn't count on this unreliable tree. The carriage sped into the city and entered the most bustling area of Shizhou City. This place seemed to be almost the same as before the zombie mutation. The streets were bustling with activity, and the peddlers who had set up stalls were energetically shouting to buy and sell. Pedestrians came and went like shuttles, and there was an endless stream of carriages. Wei Ziqin looked over, and a trace of joy appeared in her eyes. It seemed that her daughter was right. Coming to Shizhou City was the right choice. Look at these Shizhou City citizens living and working in peace and contentment. They even had the leisure to stroll around the streets as if they weren't affected by the zombie at all. Arba wasn't as optimistic as her mother. Just now, Mr. Zhong had said that the center and east of the city were relatively affluent. Then, what about the west, north, and south of the city? What kind of street scene was it? Especially the shed area in the west of the city, where the lower-class commoners from various villages and towns gathered. Would they really live carefree and happy lives? Arba retracted her gaze and looked ahead indifferently. However, these weren't things she needed to consider. After bypassing the main street and following the address Mr. Zhong gave, Qiao Zhongxing drove the carriage into the entrance of Pear Blossom Alley. Sure enough, he felt a leisurely air blow against his face. Although this place was only half a street away from the main street, it was much quieter. Locust trees were planted on both sides of the street. The carriage shuttled through the shade of the trees, and they could see the city lord's mansion at the end of the street. After turning a corner, they entered the depths of the alley, and a quiet courtyard appeared in front of everyone. Qiao Zhongxing stopped the carriage and said happily, "Get off, we're here." This residence looked really good. Although it wasn't very big, it looked very exquisite. It was more than enough for their family to live in. The main thing was that it was quiet. There was only one residence in the depths of Pear Blossom Alley, so they didn't have to worry about being disturbed. Perhaps this was originally the mansion of the city lord. Arba pondered. "Father, I like it here." Qiao Hu shouted happily. After running around for so long, Qiao Hu was overjoyed at the thought of being able to lie on a comfortable bed and sleep at night. "Let's go in and take a look." Everyone got out of the car happily. Qiao Zhongbang also carried the old lady and followed the group. Wei Ziqin held Xiao Liner's hand and walked up a few steps. Arba took the lead to knock on the door. Soon, the door opened, and a clean-cut old servant in cyan clothes walked out. He bowed toward Qiao Mu. "You are Miss Qiao's family, right? Please enter quickly. This old servant has been waiting for everyone for a long time." "You are. Miss, you're too polite. I'm Chang Shuai, the housekeeper in charge of the courtyard." Arba nodded. He had already confirmed in his heart that this courtyard seemed to have been the residence of the city lord. "Housekeeper Chang, is there anyone else in this courtyard other than you?" Arba didn't like having too many people. Actually, according to her original intention, it was enough for her family to live comfortably. Chang Shuai discreetly glanced at Arba. "Other than this old servant, there's also an old wet nurse who sweeps and a gardener. If Miss needs to purchase maidservants, this old servant can go to the dentist to pick a few suitable ones for Miss." "No need." Arba calmly interrupted him. "Remember to make a Qiao Estate signboard and hang it up as soon as possible. Wait, there will still be a fourth watch today." Chapter 141. Steward Chang's heart skipped a beat as he nodded repeatedly. With just a few words, he could already tell that although the young lady in front of him was young, she seemed to be the most authoritative person in this group of people. "Young lady, master, madam, this old servant will show you around the courtyard." Steward Chang respectfully led them in. Once they entered, they saw a small flower bed. The entire garden was overflowing with greenery. It was really well taken care of, and a delicate fragrance assailed their nostrils. Wei Zichin fell in love with this house at first glance. A middle-aged gardener stood by the flowerbed, rubbing his hands uneasily as he stepped forward to greet them. Masters, this is the gardener, Old Bai. He is clumsy with words and doesn't know how to speak, but when it comes to taking care of flowers and plants, his skills are top-notch. Chang Zai hurriedly put in a few good words for the gardener. He could tell just now that this young lady didn't seem to have any intention of keeping a servant. It's really very good. Old Bai, do you take care of this courtyard alone? Wei Zichin smiled. These flowers and plants are really well taken care of. Seeing that his mother was happy, Arba turned to Chang Zai and said, he can stay. Chang Zai was overjoyed and hurriedly gave Old Bai a look. The middle-aged man hurriedly bowed. Thank you, young lady. On the other hand, Qiao Zhongxing and the rest were slightly stunned and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So their family's cold-faced baby originally wanted to chase these servants away. Needless to say, if you asked her, she would definitely answer, it's not much use to waste food, so why keep it? Darling Qiao was already being very kind by not making them pay for food and lodging. Xiao Yarrow secretly wiped her tears as she followed behind. Her heart was bitter. She thought back to how hard it was for her and Aoyi to follow the young master back then. Chang Zai led everyone through the long corridor and introduced, there are 6 rooms here. How do you plan to distribute them, master? Qiao Zhongbang really wasn't used to the old servant calling him master. He smiled awkwardly and rubbed his nose. Jojo, you distribute them. Other than these 6 rooms, is there anything else behind? Arba asked. There's a small arched door at the back of the court, which leads to a small garden. There is a small 2-story attic inside, and there are 4 rooms for living. Arba nodded and turned to Qiao Zhongxing. Second uncle, you and the old lady can stay here. I'm going to stay in the attic with my parents. Xiao Yarrow automatically stood beside Arba. You live downstairs. Arba glanced at Xiao Yarrow. Xiao Yarrow only felt that Mrs. Voice was heavenly. She was actually prepared to sleep on the haystack or in the garden. I have my own room now. Qiao who happily ran towards one of the rooms. Arba turned his head and looked at Chang Zai. Where's that old wet nurse? She called her over. In the future, she would let her take care of the old lady after cleaning. You don't have to go through so much trouble. Just serve him 3 meals a day. Miss, you're really not particular about this. The corner of Chang Zai's mouth secretly twitched. Which rich family would call a rough old woman to take care of the old madam? Miss, you're the only one. Arba glanced at Chang Zai and vigorously waved her small hand. Our small family isn't particular about this. It's fine as long as things are done well. Soon, that old wet nurse named Shu Niang arrived in front of the Qiao family. Before she could say more than 3 sentences, Arba waved her hand and had Shu Niang carry the old lady back to her room. Arba's family settled down in Shijiao City for the time being. As for the Crown Prince, he had been very leisurely these past 2 days. The martial law in Guanlan City didn't have much to do with him. This lord had locked himself in a secret room in the Eastern Palace and disappeared for more than a day. His subordinates didn't care, but the old king of the Mo Kingdom was so anxious that he had blisters on his mouth. Chapter 142. A group of old officials accompanied the old king of Mo Kingdom, frowning. His Highness the Crown Prince was slacking in his work. It was really worrying. This matter had to be traced back to the day the Crown Prince returned to the capital. Consort Zheng's palace had a palace-made corpse causing a ruckus. The Crown Prince sent people to suppress it. This matter was originally quite good, and it could be considered a successful solution to Consort Zheng's problem. However, this matter wasn't over. Noble Consort Zheng wept as she ran to old Wang to complain tearfully. She said that the people sent by the Crown Prince were very rude and unreasonable. After taking care of that monster, they even wantonly searched her entire palace from top to bottom and smashed many of her good things. Blah blah blah. She dragged old Wang to ask the Crown Prince for compensation. When the Crown Prince went to old Wang's study to report about the corpse puppet, old Wang coldly reprimanded the Crown Prince, saying that he didn't respect his concubine mother and had no respect for anyone. Great. This was like poking a hornet's nest. This crown prince, who appeared to be gentle and cultured on the surface, was actually a straightforward person. Not only did he rebuke old Wang, he even left in a huff and went into seclusion, never to see anyone again. That night, Consort Zheng's Sephora Flower Palace was met with a disaster of destruction and looting. Although there were no clues pointing to the crown prince's doing, everyone, including old Wang, was well aware of the truth. Old Wang was furious, but this was his son's fault, so he had to take the blame. He had such an outstanding son. Although he dissed him from time to time, he knew that among all his sons, only the crown prince could do great things and inherit the Mo Kingdom's throne. Old Wang couldn't bear to touch the crown prince, so he could only pinch his nose and accept this matter. Later, he even complained to Consort Zheng about it, but could only appease her. Fortunately, before the crown prince went into seclusion, he had already given the order for the entire city to be under martial law. Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Yu Xiu had led people to search the entire city. However, in the palace, it was a long story. The crown prince didn't say that he would be responsible for the safety of the entire palace, so the Dragon Saliva Guard only stayed near the east and central palaces. Just the 3,000 men under the Imperial Army commander was not enough. Wasn't it just a matter of time? There was trouble here in the morning, and there was trouble in the afternoon. Imperial Guard Commander Hui Feng felt very tired. He was running around the palace with a group of Imperial Guards. He really wanted to cry. During the morning court session, a minister of the Great King's faction jumped out to criticize the Crown Prince's inaction and joined several other ministers to impeach the Crown Prince. The officials of the Eastern Palace Party almost got into a fight with the Great King's party. Their faces and ears turned red as they argued with each other in the throne room. Laro Wang was so angry that he almost vomited blood. After flinging his sleeves and ending court, Laro Wang hugged the beautiful Consort Zheng and wanted to take a walk in the Imperial Garden with the beauty to relieve his boredom. However, a zombie suddenly jumped out of the pond and hugged Consort Zheng tightly. It grabbed Consort Zheng's neck and roared, almost scaring Laro Wang to death. This was a very serious matter. After Laro Wang witnessed the viciousness of zombies, he finally understood the dangers of zombies. He wanted to discuss this matter with his son, but his son was in seclusion, so he anxiously gathered the other ministers to think of a solution. This is all Consort Zheng's fault. If not for Consort Zheng creating trouble out of nothing and angering the crown prince so much that he went into seclusion, how would things have ended up like this? Not many people dared to say this. The person who said this was Queen Zhao's younger brother, the Marquis of Stability, Zhao Sheng. Laro Wang wanted to retort, but when faced with his brother-in-law's righteous face, he couldn't say anything. Zhao Sheng said righteously, "In my humble opinion, we should drag Consort Zheng out and flog her 30 times to bring justice to the crown prince." Everyone was silent. The Marquis of Stability really dared to say anything. Laro Wang's face turned green. Chapter 143. The Marquis of Jiajing was one of old Wang's people and was usually there to smooth things over. When he saw old Wang's look, he quickly stepped forward to stop the Marquis of Stability. "Marquis Zhao, you can't say that." Consort Zheng was also scared out of her wits today and is still sick. She deserves it. It would have been better if he hadn't said anything, but the moment he did, Zhao Sheng was furious. Everyone knows that zombies are everywhere now, and no place is safe. Yet she still wants to stroll around the garden with the Great King. Whenever she can't stroll, she has to stroll around during these chaotic days. If not for her, would His Majesty be scared? Would His Majesty's face be damaged? Her heart is simply terrible. Zhao Sheng cupped his hands towards the Great King as he spoke and signaled for everyone to look at the little blisters by the Great King's mouth. He didn't give Consort Zheng any face. The Great King was furious. He was angered by his unfilial son. Everyone knew that the Marquis of Stability spoke without holding back. Back then, old Wang had even praised this official for being upright and outspoken and daring to admonish. He even wrote a plaque saying loyalty and righteousness for him, but now, he really wanted to slap him to death. The other officials were silent. How would they dare to interrupt when the Queen's younger brother was angrily berating Consort Zheng? They all lowered their heads and pretended to be dead, which made old Wang even angrier. "All of you, continue to invite the Crown Prince out of seclusion." Old Wang flung his sleeves and left angrily. "Until the Crown Prince comes out. If the Crown Prince doesn't come out, all of you can stay here. None of you can go back." The ministers looked at each other with bitter expressions on their faces. "What the hell? What is this called?" "This is called when the king of hell fights, the little ghosts suffer." The king himself couldn't bring himself to do it, so he had to force this group of miserable officials to do it. How sullen was that? The most tiring thing was that the Crown Prince's black-hearted heart was unparalleled. They had been in the Eastern Palace for so long, but he didn't even provide them with a cup of tea. The little palace maids and eunuchs coming in and out of the palace all greeted the officials politely. Then, they went back to doing their own things and looked straight ahead, completely ignoring this group of miserable people. "Marquis of Stability." An official looked bitterly at Zhao Sheng. The latter waved his hand and snorted coldly, "You reap what you sow. This marquis still has to go to the Central Palace to pay respects to Her Highness. You guys stay here and continue to invite the Crown Prince out of seclusion." As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and left as well, leaving the group of bitter fellows looking at each other in dismay. All of them were actually speechless. "Marquis of Stability, your preemptive strike is too fake." While all the officials were sitting outside with bitter faces and frowning, the Crown Prince was hiding in a secret room in his bedchamber. He leaned against the window and leaned on the soft brocade couch, flipping through the book in his hand. A small bronze cauldron that was half the length of an arm was suspended in the air. The bottom of the cauldron was wrapped in a circle of red flames. The cauldron lid was pushed up by the airflow from time to time, making clattering sounds. The youth with sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes, Hua Feng, was standing next to the Crown Prince, silently staring at the bronze cauldron. It wasn't until the door to the secret room was pushed open with a whoosh that Hua Feng withdrew his gaze and glanced at the door. The person who entered was a vigorous youth in black. A reddish-brown nether spring flower was embroidered on his chest, and the flower's shape was a bit ostentatious. "Drink it." The Crown Prince didn't even look up as he flicked his finger over another page. The eyes of the youth who entered brightened slightly, and he quickly moved to the table and drained the tea in one gulp. Hua Feng glanced at him and pursed his lips. "How is it?" The Crown Prince's question was a bit out of the blue, but the youth immediately understood and ran up with a grin. Chapter 144. Don't worry, Your Highness. This subordinate has already secretly led people to search every nook and cranny inside and outside the palace. There won't be any more zombies hiding there. Millimeter. The Crown Prince responded indifferently. With a flick of his sleeve, a streak of fire immediately shot into the bronze cauldron, immediately suppressing something that was struggling to break free. The cauldron continued to emit thumping sounds, but the Crown Prince didn't even look at it. In reality, when the Crown Prince ordered Yu Xiu to search the city, he also ordered Hidden Flower to search the palace for hidden dangers. Even if it was for Queen Zhao's sake, the Crown Prince wouldn't truly stand by and do nothing. "Has Hidden Current returned?" The Crown Prince put down the book in his hand and looked up at the captain of the Hidden Pavilion, Hidden Flower, who had a nether spring flower embroidered on his chest. "He's waiting outside." Hidden Flower's mouth twitched silently. "Cough, how about having him wash up first before coming to see you?" "No need. Come in," the Crown Prince said indifferently, and the door to the secret room opened. A corpse puppet with long, dried-up hair suddenly bounced in. As it bounced, the rotten flesh hanging from its body fell to the ground with a pitter-patter, provoking Huafeng's extremely disdainful gaze. "My lord." The zombie youth reached out to brush away the dried-up hair draped over his face and revealed a mouthful of ghastly white teeth as he flashed a creepy smile at the Crown Prince. Even the Crown Prince, who was as calm as this, couldn't help but avert his gaze. "Your makeup is so ugly." "My lord, I've been running for an entire day. Those Imperial Palace guards chased after me, so it's very tragic. My makeup was actually pretty good before, but after being tossed around in water and fire, even the most perfect makeup would become unbearable to look at." Hidden Flower glared at the young corpse puppet as he tried to defend himself. He shrank back in fright when Hidden Flower glared at him. "Go wash up before coming back," Hidden Flower shouted at his Hidden Pavilion member. Hidden Current pursed his lips and ran out dejectedly. The Crown Prince extended a clean and slender hand, and Huifeng immediately understood and handed him a cup of tea. "Let Consort Zheng lie in bed for a while longer. It will also allow Imperial Mother to have some peace and quiet." With a single sentence from this uncle, Consort Zheng was doomed to be miserable for at least the next month. Consort Zheng had been causing too much trouble recently. If it weren't for that, he wouldn't have bothered to deal with her. "You're just a little favored concubine. You don't even have the appearance of a favored concubine. It's one thing for you to strut around in the imperial harem, but you still dare to make a fuss in front of him. It's simply inexplicable and unbearable." The Crown Prince knew very well what kind of character his father was. He was easily swayed and usually did not have much of an opinion. Not only was he fond of beauties, he was also muddle-headed and did not understand the situation all day long. With such a father, the Crown Prince expressed his helplessness. In order to make his father pay attention to the matter of zombies, the Crown Prince had found someone to arrange such a big show in the Imperial Garden. One could only imagine how amazing the drama would be when Undercurrent, who was disguised as a zombie, suddenly jumped out of the garden pool and grabbed Consort Zheng, trying to strangle her to death. A son who worried himself to death for his father sighed and put down the teacup in his hand. Suddenly, the Crown Prince's brows twitched, and he took out a jade communication talisman from his pocket. With a light swipe of his finger, lines of small characters quickly and clearly appeared. Hidden Flower and Huifeng stood next to the Crown Prince without batting an eyelid, and their gazes both drifted towards the jade talisman. Chapter 145. There were many words written on the jade talisman, but the Crown Prince's gaze was fixed on the small line. "A youth from Daybreak Sect strongly requested to give Miss Qiao a kiss, but Miss Qiao sternly refused and rolled her eyes at her." These words sounded funny no matter how one looked at it, but the two couldn't laugh. Looking at the Crown Prince's expressionless face, Hidden Flower and Huifeng both felt that a storm was about to come. "A youth from Daybreak Sect." The Crown Prince indifferently read this line of words with an incomparably gentle voice and an unchanging expression. However, Hidden Flower and Huifeng, who were standing next to him, couldn't help but tremble. Bang! The cup in the Crown Prince's hand instantly turned into powder. The Crown Prince is so scary. Please don't take out your anger on him. For his own safety, Hidden Flower hurriedly stepped forward and slandered, "Your Highness, according to this subordinate's knowledge, Daybreak Sect also has a stronghold in Guanlan City. How about this subordinate immediately bring people to flatten this stronghold? How about it? Slandering a subject." Huifeng disdainfully swept him a glance and then nodded. "Your Highness, Hidden Flower's suggestion is quite good. How about we do it this way? Let this subordinate bring people and flatten Daybreak Sect's stronghold in the royal capital." Hidden Flower. What the fuck was with your disdainful gaze just now? The Crown Prince glanced at the two of them in silence. After a while, he slowly said, "If this Crown Prince personally goes to Shizhou City to patrol." "Your Highness, you mustn't." Hidden Flower's expression changed, and he wished for nothing more than to hug the Crown Prince's thigh. "You've only returned to the royal capital for less than 2 days. You absolutely can't go out now." Right. Her Majesty the Queen also won't agree to your Highness leaving the capital to see the little girl at such a dangerous time. The Crown Prince narrowed his eyes and raised his cold eyebrows. "Patrol?" Huifeng really wanted to cry. "Sir, didn't you just come back from your patrol?" "Your Highness, how about this subordinate leave the capital to patrol the various cities and see the extent of the zombies' transformation?" Hidden Flower volunteered. "I can also help your Highness give the little girl a gift on the way." Huifeng sneered. "What kind of path did you follow that led you all the way to Shizhou City? Then." "All right." The Crown Prince nodded reluctantly and looked up at the bronze cauldron. "It'll take at least 2 days to form. Go prepare it. That child has a hobby of collecting. Do as you see fit." Hidden Flower. So this subordinate still has to go shopping in the royal capital? The crown prince put away the communication jade talisman, stood up, and walked out of the secret chamber. Shizhou City didn't seem to be very safe either. Just now, he had received the little girl's signal of danger and immediately sensed that the wisp of soul remembrance attached to the ferule was acting strangely. No one knew that the Mo Kingdom's crown prince was a rarely seen profound artifact master. The ferule, ink, had come from his hands. When the mystic weapon took shape, Mo Lian had used his essence blood to inject a soul remembrance clone into it. Hence, when Li Xiong, that guy, fantasized about using the ancient mystic mirror to tear apart Xiaomu's conscious, he was immediately sent flying by the terrifying soul energy emitted by Mo Lian's soul remembrance clone. Huifeng to Huifeng? Huifeng. Huifeng, you the crown prince sighed and stepped out of the secret chamber. In fact, the best way was to bring the little girl's family to the royal city to settle down. However, looking at the little girl's unapproachable appearance, he was afraid that she would hate him if he used any means. Therefore, he could only let nature take its course. Chapter 146. When his personal eunuch saw the crown prince come out of the inner room, his eyes lit up. He immediately ran over and asked, "Your Highness, is it time to see the officials?" Those officials were so miserable. They had been waiting since the afternoon. Seeing that it was already past mealtime, His Highness the Crown Prince willfully left them hanging outside the door. The Crown Prince swept a glance at that eunuch. "Do you think this Crown Prince is such an easygoing person? You don't look like one at all." After that, without waiting for any further instructions from the Great Master, he rushed out of the door. The little eunuch put on a cold expression and said to the crowd of officials who surrounded him, "My lords, His Highness the Crown Prince has gone to bed." Clang! The hearts of all the ministers were broken to the ground. They had been waiting from dawn to dusk, thinking that the great Crown Prince would kindly come out to see them. However, he didn't. So their hopes that the Crown Prince's black heart would be a little whiter were impossible. "Marquis of Jiajing, what do you think we should do? Should we wait or not?" If he had known, he would have followed the Marquis of Stability's example and left early. That way, he wouldn't have been a fool here for an entire day. The Marquis of Jiajing was furious. "What do you think? The great king wants us to wait here. Do you dare to not wait? Wait. As long as His Highness the Crown Prince doesn't see us, we will wait here for a day." Even if they had to wait for grass to grow and mushrooms to grow, they still had to wait. An official said with tears streaming down his face. If crying could soften the Crown Prince's heart, they really wanted to turn their tears into a long river. They didn't know if there was anyone in this world who could make His Highness the Crown Prince let go of all his arrogance and willfulness. They guessed that it was impossible. Achoo! Our dear Xiao Mu rubbed her small nose and sat on the edge of the soft bed, swinging her short legs. "Jojo, can you sleep alone?" Arba looked gloomily at his mother and nodded repeatedly to show that he could do it. "All right then. Mother will come to see you later." Wei Ziqin pinched her daughter's little face and reached out to carry the noisy little bun Jolin. She got up and walked out the door. "Mother, please don't come." She wasn't a real baby who needed her mother to tuck in her blanket in the middle of the night. Arba rolled onto the bed and buried himself in the quilt. Smelling the fragrance of the quilt, he took a deep breath. He could finally have a good night's sleep. At this moment, Shizhou City's city gates were already closed. A horse-drawn carriage quickly rushed to the tightly shut city gate. A person jumped down from the carriage, ignoring the surrounding commoners who were sleeping in the open. He directly rushed to the city gate and slammed the gate, shouting, "Open the gate! Open the door! Open the door! Didn't you see Second Elder Liu returning to the city? Open the door!" The two body cultivators guarding the city lowered their heads to take a look. Through the light from the torches, they said indifferently, "The city lord has ordered for the city gates to be closed before nightfall. The city gates can only be opened the next morning. You two blind dogs. Who is second young Master Liu?" One of the Liu family guards who slammed the gate scolded angrily, "This is the Liu estate's second young master. How dare you treat him like this? Quickly open the city gates." The two body cultivators coldly glanced at the guards and went down the city gate tower. They didn't care about the Liu estate guards' curses. "Second young master, we can't go in?" A soft voice came from the carriage. Chapter 147. A young master in luxurious brocade clothes walked out of the carriage and waved a folding fan in his hand, looking like a dandy. After getting out of the carriage, he kicked the guard and cursed, "What's going on? What's going on? You can't even handle such a small matter. What's the use of having people like you?" The Liu estate's guard said bitterly, "Young master, they said the city lord's estate gave a strict order to not open the city gates at night." Preposterous. The young master in luxurious brocade clothes pointed at the city gate tower with his fan and berated angrily, "Don't you know who this young master is? Hurry up and open the city gates. You bunch of trash. If they don't open the gates, can't you think of a way? Go. Smash the city gates. This young master wants to go in right now." A corner of the carriage's curtain was lifted, revealing a gentle and fair face that was as pure as a lotus flower. That woman softly called out, "Young Master Liu." The young man in luxurious clothes immediately changed into a drooling pig face and walked toward the carriage with a grin. "Little sister Xiao Wan, don't worry. We'll be able to enter the city immediately." Wen Ruan nodded with a smile and lowered her head shyly from the young master's gaze. The young man in luxurious clothes' heart wavered, but he could not do anything else under everyone's gaze, so he helplessly gave up. He turned around and kicked the manservant again. "Why aren't you smashing the city gates? This bunch of daring dogs. When uncle comes, I'll teach them a lesson." They actually dared to humiliate him, second young Master Liu, in front of a beauty. This was simply preposterous. Wen Ruan put down the curtain in her hand, and a trace of mockery flitted through her eyes. What a brainless guy. If it were not for the fact that she was powerless and had a difficult journey, she would not have accompanied this dandy young master and hitched a ride in his carriage to Shizhou City. A few ferocious manservants took out a few sticks from the carriage and really followed this hedonistic young master to smash the city gate. There were many commoners gathered at the city gates. They had all lined up overnight and were waiting to enter the city early the next day. When they saw this noble young master's exaggerated actions, they were all dumbstruck and did not know what to say. Bang, bang, bang. The city gates were violently smashed by the clubs, producing loud bangs. The commoners subconsciously gathered to the sides and pointed at the young master while muttering softly, "Smash. Smash it. Use all your strength. Did you not eat?" The young master kicked a certain manservant's butt and shouted angrily, "If the city gate is destroyed, this young master will take responsibility until the end." At this time, a farmer drove a lazy donkey cart over, shouting all the way. The procession at the city gate had automatically dispersed to the two sides. The lazy donkey cart had a smooth journey and slowly followed behind the carriage. There were about a dozen people sitting on the donkey cart, men and women of all ages, young and old. They wished they could sit on top of each other. The donkey cart was slow to begin with, and with so many people in tow, one could imagine how difficult the journey was. That was how Xiao Wenhuan had come all the way here. At this moment, she was sitting sideways on the lap of a dark-skinned and simple-looking young man. The young man looked honest, but his hands were not honest. They were casually placed on Xiao Wenhuan's small waist and stroked it from time to time. There was limited space on the donkey cart. Basically, all the men and women were squeezed together. Even if Xiao Wenhuan had a bellyful of anger, she had nowhere to vent it. Unless she jumped out of the car, she would have to endure it. Chapter 148. The young man hugging Xiao Wenhuan was none other than her husband, third junior Wei, who was going to be married in September. The Wei family village was not far from Chaotu village, and there was only the Fang family village between them. The Wei family village was much more prosperous than Chaotu village. Elderly Lady Wei was very satisfied when she arranged this marriage for Xiao Wenhuan. However, Xiao Wenhuan herself was not satisfied. She felt that the Wei family had 3 sons, and she was only marrying the youngest son. After marrying him, not only would she have to listen to her grandmother's nagging, but she might also be bullied by her two sisters-in-law. The Wei family's old lady, Madame Nyo, was shrewd and difficult to get along with. She was always the one scheming against others, and no one could scheme against her. Ever since she married her two daughters-in-law, they had been obediently held in her hands. How could Xiao Wenhuan be satisfied with such a family? She had always been a proud person. What she wanted the most was to marry into the city and become a wealthy and respectable young madam. Unfortunately, her fate was full of misfortune. After being heartlessly abandoned by her family, she encountered this outrageous family while fleeing. The Wei family's old lady, Madame Nyo, made the decision the night she met Xiao Wenhuan. She made the young couple bow to heaven and earth and get married. She bluntly said that she would only flee to Shizhou City with Xiao Wenhuan if she became a member of the Wei family. That night, without any cover, the impatient third junior Wei and Xiao Wenhuan entered the bridal chamber in advance. Xiao Wenhuan mourned her tragic fate along the way. She combed her hair and followed the Wei family to Shizhou City with a numb expression. The Wei family jumped off the donkey cart and noisily ran toward the city gate. At this time, the ruckus caused by the young master of the Liu estate smashing the city gate became more and more intense. The city gate guards had already rushed to the city lord's estate to report. The two body cultivators appeared on the city gate tower again and looked down coldly. Don't blame us for being impolite if the people below continue to wantonly destroy the city gate. Young Master Liu. Wen Ruan lifted the curtain and called out softly. This young Master Liu was too reckless. Wen Ruan could not help but frown. She wanted to enter the city, not cause trouble. She did not know how to deal with the situation. Little sister Xiao Wan, don't worry. The city gates will open soon, the well-dressed young man said with a smile. As soon as he finished speaking, a row of city guards rushed up to the top of the gate tower. They were all holding bows and arrows and were ready for battle. They aimed at the guards of the Liu residence below. What are you doing? Young Master Liu's voice changed from fright. She really didn't expect that after going out for a few days for sightseeing, not only would she be stopped at the door when she returned home, she would also be shot at with arrows. Where did these people get the guts from? Wen Ruan. Xiao Wenhuan walked up and immediately saw the slender woman sitting inside the carriage. Wen Ruan looked up and met her gaze. She sized up the woman in ragged clothes with a woman's hairstyle, and her lips involuntarily curled into a secret smile. It's cousin Wenhuan. How come you've become like this after not seeing you for so long? Wen Ruan ignored Xiao Wenhuan's ashen face and covered her mouth with her small, fair hand. She pretended to cry out, Cousin Wenhuan, why are you dressed as a woman? I remember you got married in September. At this time, Arba woke up from his sleep and abruptly opened his eyes. His cold eyes looked straight at the muslin canopy above his head. He sat up and listened carefully. He saw a hubbub of voices coming from the city lord's estate, which was only half a street away. It seemed that the city lord had ordered people to leave the estate overnight. Chapter 149. Arba blinked her pitch-black eyes and sat alone in the darkness for a long while, until the bustling sounds of the city lord's mansion faded away. She lay down and closed her eyes for a while, but she couldn't fall asleep no matter what. Arba simply got up and lit the lamp. Facing the candle flame, she took out a blank talisman paper and started to draw talismans. She didn't have time to draw talismans when she received 300 blank talisman papers from the store. Now that she couldn't fall asleep, she got up to find something to do. With the talisman brush in hand, Arba spread open the blank talisman paper and smoothly drew talismans on it. Her main goal was to draw some storage talismans so that she wouldn't have to worry about storing things in the future. Unexpectedly, the first storage talisman she drew was a fine blue talisman. Arba was stunned. Her brush paused slightly, then she started to draw talismans one by one. However, the talismans she drew this time were all fine blue talismans. What did this mean? Arba was astonished. She tried to draw a strength talisman or a speed talisman. In the end, she discovered that the elementary talismans she drew were all fine blue talismans. She then tried to draw a few useless safety talismans, calming talismans, dizziness talismans, and immobilization talismans. Afterwards, she confirmed that the elementary talismans she drew were all upgraded to fine blue talismans. Arbor stopped writing. Her mystic sense entered her conscious and flipped through a jade slip from the golden talisman jade tome. She read the sentence again. The path of a talisman master is filled with unimaginable hardships and dangers. Talisman masters had to train for at least 3 years before they could draw a few blue talismans. The success rate of a blue talisman was only 1/10 of a yellow talisman. Therefore, wasn't her success rate of a fine blue talisman a bit strange? The total number of talismans she drew didn't exceed 100, right? Her success rate of a blue talisman was already 100%. She felt that her success rate was very interesting. If other talisman masters knew about it, she wondered what they would think. When she left her conscious, 2 demonstration talismans floated out of the golden talisman jade tome. Arbor silently reached out to take them and examined them. Elementary talisman, drowsy talisman, falls asleep for 15 minutes. Opponents 1 level higher than the user will be immune to the effect. Elementary talisman, summoning talisman, randomly summons a natural animal or plant. Effect: 1 day. The level of the summoning must not exceed the user's profound strength by more than 3 levels. Xiao Mu first set these 2 talismans to the side and continued to silently draw her storage talisman. One could never have too many storage talismans. In the future, when everyone went out to gather supplies, they would rely on these storage talismans. When the time came, she would equip everyone in the team with some storage talismans, so they wouldn't have to worry about not being able to collect things wherever they went. The little girl who was happily drawing the storage talisman didn't realize that the speed at which she drew the storage talisman was getting faster and faster. Originally, it took her 15 minutes to draw a storage talisman, but now, she could draw one in minutes. It wasn't until there was a pile of blue storage talismans in his hand that Arbor woke up. Oh my god, I've already drawn over 200 blue storage talismans. Looking up at the sky, the east was already starting to brighten. Arbor exhaled and stored the 100 blank talismans into one of the blue storage talismans. Looking at the remaining 7 blank talismans on the table, Arbor carefully and slowly drew the last storage talisman. The moment she put the brush away, her mind slightly stirred. A strand of purple light suddenly appeared on the talisman, almost blinding her eyes in an instant. A peerless purple talisman. Arbor's pink and tender little face revealed a slight smile. This smile was much more natural than any of her previous fake smiles. This was a genuine smile that came from the bottom of her heart. There was no facial paralysis, no stupefaction. In this instant, this little wooden doll seemed to have been lit up, even her life came alive. Chapter 150. She placed the 200 over blue storage talismans she had drawn into this supreme-grade purple talisman. Arbor stretched out 2 fingers and gently stroked the talisman. A purple light flashed, and 4 cubic meters of storage space appeared in front of her. The power of a supreme-grade purple talisman was 4 times that of a yellow talisman. This supreme-grade purple storage talisman had 4 cubic meters of storage space. It could be accessed 400 times each. It was definitely worth it. Arbor held it in her hands and looked at it for a long time. Only then did she put this supreme-grade purple talisman into her waist bag. There were only 6 blank talismans on the table. Arbor took the 2 newly drawn talismans and started to draw them. She first drew a sleeping talisman, but it ended in failure. The second time, a blue light flashed, and she drew an elementary blue sleeping talisman. The power of a blue talisman was twice that of a yellow talisman. When used on a talisman, it could double the time. This blue sleeping talisman could make people sleep for 30 minutes. Arbor held the talisman pen and thought about the remaining 4 blank talismans. She gave up on drawing the sleeping talisman and started to draw the summoning talisman. Looking at the description of this talisman, it seemed to be quite powerful. It could randomly summon all the animals and plants in the natural world. This range was huge. It could be ordinary animals and plants, or it could be mystic beasts and evil plants. Anything was possible. Arba took a deep breath and drew the talisman. This summoning talisman was probably beyond the norm among elementary talismans. It was abnormally difficult to draw. One wrong stroke and the entire talisman would be scrapped. Even with Xiao Mu's super smooth talisman drawing skills, she was somewhat at a loss after failing 3 times in a row. The sun rose outside the window, and the sound of her parents waking up and walking around could be heard. Arba stared at the last blank talisman on the table. Holding the talisman pen, she calmed herself down and drew again. All the sounds outside the window were isolated by her 5 senses in an instant. There was no sound at all. Arba was completely immersed in the world of talismans. She concentrated on drawing the elementary summoning talisman. At this very moment, Xiao Mu was completely engrossed in it and did not notice that the door to her room had been pushed open. Wei Ziqin was holding her youngest daughter, Xiao Lin, as she stood dazedly by the door, gazing at her eldest daughter, who was enveloped in a layer of multicolored light. Is Jojo awake? Xiao Zhongbang, who had a good night's sleep and was full of energy, walked to his wife with a smile. When his eyes fell on his daughter at the table, he was also stunned. His daughter. What's on the table is a talisman paper, right? Her daughter was holding a talisman brush and drawing talismans with a serious expression on her face. This situation was somewhat inconceivable. Xiao Zhongbang had never known that his daughter was actually a talisman master. The moment he put away the brush, the entire talisman paper emitted a faint blue light. Xiao Mu heaved a long sigh of relief, and her taut nerves finally relaxed slightly. This time, the summoning talisman was finally drawn successfully. Her lips curled into a smile again, which fell into the eyes of the family of 3 standing by the door. Xiao Lin cried out happily, "Sister, you're beautiful. Sister, it's time to eat. Sister is awesome." Although she did not know what praiseworthy thing her sister had done, Xiao Lin cried out without any integrity when she saw her parents' shocked expressions. Arba was stunned. She turned to look at the door. The warm morning sun shone on her family, making her feel a little warmer. "Father, Mother, good morning." Arba smiled. Chapter 151. Sister, Sister. It's time for dinner. Xiao Lin stretched out her little paws and giggled at her sister enthusiastically. Wei Ziqin stuffed the little foodie into Xiao Zhongbang's arms and walked quickly to Arba's side. She looked at the talismans in Arba's hands in shock. "Jojo, this is? The 2 storage talismans you gave me last time were? Was it you?" "I drew them." Arba nodded. She didn't intend to keep it a secret from them. Since they happened to see it, she might as well tell them about the talismans. That way, her mother wouldn't treat the 2 storage talismans like treasures, counting the number of times she could use them and not daring to store them. Wei Ziqin's face was full of disbelief. The 2 storage talismans that Jojo had given her were a gift from the expert who had saved her. One had a large space and one had a small space. One could store 100 times, the other could store 200 times. It was filled with all kinds of utensils, food, clothes, and so on that she had tidied up the house. She couldn't bear to use them. But now, Jojo was saying that she had drawn the storage talismans. Arba rubbed her little nose and looked at her mother a little embarrassedly. She had casually told a lie that the storage talismans were a gift from the Crown Prince. Now, she was exposed. "Ahem. Mom, these storage talismans are actually quite easy to draw. Look." She took out a purple talisman from her waist and took out 30 blue storage talismans. These can store 200 times and have 2 cubic meters of space. Arba's mother was dumbfounded. Her father was also petrified. "Jojo, did you draw these storage talismans the whole night?" Xiao Zhongbang snapped out of his daze and immediately put on a solemn expression as he looked at his daughter. "Although it's indeed very impressive that you can draw 30 storage talismans in one night, you're still young after all and still growing. Don't be so impatient in the future. You need to rest and sleep, okay? Arba, actually, I drew more than 200 talismans in one night." She didn't dare to say this to her father. She just nodded her head in agreement. Xiao Zhongbang had seen storage talismans in his sect before, which was a treasure comparable to a mystic cultivator's inner world. Thus, his knowledge was much higher than Wei Zichin's, and he knew that this type of storage talisman was very rare. Moreover, Qiao Zhongbang was extremely clearly aware that talisman techniques had been passed down from generation to generation since the ancient times until now, and many talisman techniques had been drowned in the torrent of history and had been lost for a long time. For example, not everyone knew how to draw storage talismans. It was unknown whether there were any talisman patrician families in Guanlan City who knew how to draw storage talismans. In any case, he only knew that a storage talisman was a highly sought-after item, whether it was placed in an auction or in the black market. However, at this moment, when his daughter acted like a nouveau riche and his wife, giving each of them 10 talismans, Qiao Zhongbang's hand holding the storage talisman trembled slightly, and his eyes were filled with an expression that said, "Am I dreaming?" These 10 talismans are for second uncle. Arba stuffed another 10 blue talismans into his father's hands. He then picked up the blue and yellow summoning talismans and looked at them. Finally, he put away the blue talisman and planned to open a yellow talisman. "Jojo, what's this?" Qiao Zhongbang's agitated emotions calmed down slightly. His gaze was fixed on the yellow summoning talisman in Arba's hand. This beginner-level yellow summoning talisman was the demonstration talisman that had just fallen out of the golden talisman jade tome. Arba thought for a moment before taking the yellow talisman and walking out of the building. He said as he walked, "This is a summoning talisman." Chapter 152. She might summon a large animal like a jackal, wolf, tiger, or leopard later. When Xiao Mu walked downstairs, she bumped into the girl Xiaoyao, who approached her with a grin. "Master, madam, little master, breakfast is ready." The little foodie lay in her father's arms, and her eyes lit up when she heard that. "Big sister, breakfast." Arba paused and turned back to say to Xiaoyao, "You guys go ahead first. I'll come to the parlor to eat later." "No, no." Qiao Zhongbang shook his head. "It's rare to see a legendary summoning talisman. How can father not stay and take a look?" Wei Zichin also expressed her willingness to watch. Xiaoyao, on the other hand, was a little dumbfounded. She looked at her little master and asked in astonishment, "Summoning talisman?" Was there something wrong with her ears? Why did she hear master mention a summoning talisman? From what she knew, this talisman was a talisman patrician family in Guanlan City that had been treasured for generations and was on the verge of extinction. The entire patrician family only had one summoning talisman, and it was worshipped in the ancestral hall all day long like a divine object. "All right then." Arba nodded. "Father, mother, don't be nervous. The summoned animals and plants should listen to orders." Actually, she didn't have any confidence when she said that. She had never summoned any animals or plants from beginning to end, so who knew what the hell she would summon? What if it was a ferocious beast? She didn't want to scare Xiao Lin into crying with her loud voice. "Cough, father, mother, carry Xiao Lin and walk further away." Arba held the yellow talisman and reminded them. Wei Zichin thought that there might be danger, so she nodded and pulled Qiao Zhongbang back with her. She even exhorted, "Jojo, be careful. Run if you see something wrong." Arba looked down at the yellow summoning talisman in her hand. These talismans were all made by her, and the talisman energy contained her aura. To her, opening the talisman was too easy. She didn't even need to drip her blood on the talisman. She just stretched out 2 fingers and wiped the talisman. After the talisman broke and the yellow light burst out, everyone tried their best to open their eyes and look at the garden. They were all very nervous. Qiao Mu, who was anticipating the appearance of a ferocious beast, was already in a fighting stance, waiting for the legendary ferocious beast to pounce on her and let her beat it into submission. However, a shrill cry rang in her ears, so shrill that her small body trembled. A few green feathers floated towards her, and the fluff drilled into her face. Arba spat twice and wiped the fur on his face with his little hand. The shock in his eyes was still there. Suddenly, a creature with a neck and claws that were very slender and long, flapping a pair of incomparably short wings and squealing, hopped over, flapping its small wings as it chased after her while screaming. "Holy shit, With this appearance, isn't it just a mutated chicken? This was a far cry from the ferocious beast she had in mind, all right? You. Don't come over. What? Arba's eyes widened. Seeing the chicken pounce over, she suddenly turned around and ran out of the garden. Qiao Zhongbang and his wife looked at each other in dismay. They couldn't help but burst into laughter. Their daughter's behavior just now was too funny. This was how a little girl should be energetic. The husband and wife happily carried their daughter and chased after her. Jojo, don't run around. The small parlor for eating is over there. Who would be in the mood to eat at a time like this? Arba sadly looked up at the clear sky, her heart filled with helplessness. Chapter 153. Good morning, big brother, sister-in-law. Qiao Zhongxing had a good night's sleep and happily brought his son to the entrance of the small parlor. When he looked up and saw his eldest brother and his wife, he smiled and stopped. Who would have thought that when he turned around, he would see his niece, who was usually calm and composed and had the appearance of a little adult, being chased by a strange thing and running towards the reception pavilion behind him. She even let out an anxious voice from her mouth. Go back, go back. Qiao Zhongxing was dumbfounded. His son, Qiao Hu, exclaimed, Dad, it's a pheasant. Is it for us? Qiao Zhongbang and his wife, Ahum, second brother, don't be nervous. Let's go and have breakfast first. Qiao Zhongbang smiled and patted his younger brother's shoulder. He thought of something and reached into his sleeve to take out a stack of 10 storage talismans, stuffing them into Qiao Zhongxing's hands. Big brother, what are these? Talisman papers? The talisman papers sold in the shop were very expensive, and most of them were fake. Where did his brother get these? Yes, these are storage talismans your niece drew. Let's go in and talk about it in detail. They sat at the round table. Qiao Zhongbang told his younger brother how to use the talismans. He patted his dazed younger brother and chuckled. Second brother, it's fine if we keep this between ourselves. Jojo said that it's not difficult to draw these talismans, you just have to use them. Qiao Zhongbang nodded at him. Qiao Zhongxing immediately understood. Don't worry, big brother, sister-in-law. I won't tell anyone about the talismans. It was too amazing. His niece was actually a rare talisman master. Wei Ziqin exhorted the children a few more times, then turned to look at her eldest daughter, who had been chased by the pheasant and ran around in circles downstairs before bouncing back. Jojo. You guys eat first. Arba dashed out the door again and disappeared in an instant. The little foodie nibbled on a pastry and suddenly said in a childish voice, Big sister, you're so funny. Everyone burst into laughter. Arba ran all the way out of the reception hall and rushed to the gate. That damned chicken, flapping its short wings as it chased after her, incessantly clucking. She was the one who summoned it, so she had to swallow this bitter fruit herself. Arba ran to the door and suddenly stopped. He turned to Newbie and stretched out his hand. Stop right there. The pheasant took small steps and stopped. Suddenly, it flapped its small wings and spat out a column of water. Qiao Mu was caught off guard. How could she have known that this weakling could spit saliva? She was immediately covered in water from head to toe, dripping down. The little guy's eyes immediately burned with anger. Suddenly, he grabbed the feral in his hand and chased after Newbie. Don't run, you weakling. Let's see if I can beat this brat to death. Coo coo coo. Even though this weak chicken didn't have much meat on its body, it was extremely nimble and clever. When it saw Qiao Mu rushing over with an ominous glint in her eyes, it hurriedly flapped its little wings and ran towards the entrance of the alley. Don't run. Arba was both angry and amused. After turning a corner, they arrived at the gate of the city lord's mansion. Arba paused slightly. She didn't expect to see a group of people kneeling in front of the city lord's mansion. That weak chicken rushed over and left claw marks on their heads, causing the people kneeling in front of the city lord's mansion to cry out in alarm. Arba was so angry that the corners of her lips twitched. She suddenly took out the spirit-binding rope and threw it out. Coo coo coo. The pheasant's legs were bound by a hemp rope. It still wanted to run, but the child's wrist tightened. It couldn't help but flap its short wings and scream as it fell into the child's hands. Chapter 154. Arba's small hand pinched the chicken's neck, causing the chicken to make pitiful cooing sounds. "Don't cry." Arba hit the chicken's head in annoyance, grabbed the chicken's neck, and turned to leave. "Arba!" A shout came from the gate of the mayor's mansion. Arba turned to see Qiao Wenhuan's figure striding over, and raised her eyebrows slightly. It seemed that Qiao Wenhuan had the ability to escape after obtaining the special speed. After she was kicked out of the team, Qiao Mu already couldn't be bothered to speak with her, so she merely swept her a glance when she saw her before expressionlessly turning around to leave with the chicken in her hand. "Stop right there, Arba." Qiao Wenhuan rushed behind Arba, and just as her fingers were about to grab her slender arm, Arba impolitely kicked her. Qiao Wenhuan cried out in surprise, and she took a few steps back and sat on the ground. "Wife." Third brother Wei ran over and helped Qiao Wenhuan up. Arba then realized that Qiao Wenhuan had combed her hair. Qiao Wenhuan got married after not seeing her for 2 days. This seemed to be a bit fast. Nene Nyo ran up, and her shrewd eyes scanned Qiao Mu from head to toe. When she saw that this child's cheeks were rosy and her clothes were bright and beautiful, a shrewd glint flitted across her eyes. "Isn't this old Qiao's family's Arba?" Madame Nyo walked up with a smile, and tried to hold Arba's little hand. "Do you still remember Granny Nyo from the Wei family village?" Arba took a step back with the chicken, and said with a wooden face, "I don't know you." Madame Nyo's deliberate smile suddenly froze on her face. "This child, didn't the two families meet a while ago because of your aunt's marriage?" Madame Nyo smiled awkwardly. "But you're still young, so it's normal that you don't remember. Where's your grandmother?" "Granny Nyo is going to greet your grandmother." Seeing that this child was dressed in clean and beautiful clothes, she must be living a good life. It had been hard on the Wei clan to flee all the way here. They were exhausted and didn't even have a place to stay. If they didn't go now, when would they? "Miss Qiao, did the commotion caused by the city lord's mansion in the middle of the night disturb your rest?" The scholar Zhong Yang walked over and asked with a gentle expression. "Last night, Concubine Liu's reckless second nephew caused a huge commotion. In his fury, the city lord almost chased Concubine Liu's entire family out of Shijiu City. That night, Master Liu tied up his second son and knelt in front of the mayor's mansion to beg for forgiveness. Concubine Liu cried for the entire night, causing chaos in the mayor's mansion. With such a large commotion, the Qiao residence, which was only half an alley away, was definitely affected. Zhong Yang looked at the child apologetically. "No." Arba shook his head. "Mr. Zhong, you worry too much. We had a good rest." "That's good." Zhong Yang nodded with a smile. Madame Nyo's line of sight, back and forth on Zhong Yang Arba's body, emitted bursts of sparks. Arba, this brat, was actually so close to the city lord's personal scholar. It seemed like there was hope to fight for some benefits for their Wei clan. "That. Mr. Zhong, if there's nothing else, I'll go back first." Arba didn't wait for Madame Nyo to speak and nodded at Zhong Yang before turning to leave. "You." Madame Nyo was so angry that her face turned green when she saw that the little fellow didn't give her any face. How would Qiao Mu pay attention to her? She carried the squawking chicken and walked straight home. "Isn't this big sister Zichin's Jojo?" A gentle voice entered Arba's ears, causing his expression to instantly turn extremely cold. Chapter 155. This voice sounded a bit younger than in her previous life, but it was still as familiar as a nightmare. She would never forget it. She appeared. Wen Ruwan. This venomous woman. No matter how docile and pleasant she pretended to be, it could not erase her venomous nature. In her previous life, Wen Ruwan only appeared by her grandmother's side a year after the zombie outbreak. Her mother's health deteriorated after giving birth to her younger brother. In this life, Wen Ruwan actually appeared ahead of schedule. In reality, she could not understand why Wen Ruwan targeted her father when she was so scheming and capable. She could have schemed against any powerful and influential family. In the beginning, Her father did not agree to marry Wen Ruan no matter what. It was one thing for him to be intimidated by her grandmother, but Arba felt that there was more to it than met the eye. At that time, Wen Ruan was dead set on marrying Qiao Zhongbang. Qiao Zhongbang was a person with crippled mystic veins. How could Wen Ruan take a liking to him? Don't talk about love. Arba scoffed. She must have missed out on some benefits. At this moment, Wen Ruan's warm smile hung on her lips. However, when she met Qiao Mu's gaze, which was like a deep whirlpool that continuously tore at her soul, she couldn't help but be taken aback. This child's gaze. Why did it seem like it carried a chill from the abyss? There was bone-deep hatred in his eyes. Could it be that she was imagining things? Wen Ruan blinked. When she looked over again, she saw the child's wooden face without any expression. Phew. As expected, it was her imagination. Jojo, is Aunt doing well? Wen Ruan's voice was very soft and sweet. It was pleasant to the ear. Grandmother? She's doing quite well. Arba looked meaningfully at Wen Ruan. Aunt Wen also wants to visit grandmother. In fact, Wen Ruan was her grandmother's distant niece. In her previous life, her grandmother doted on Wen Ruan dearly. It would not be an exaggeration to say that she treated Wen Ruan as half a daughter. If it weren't for grandmother's support, father wouldn't have married Wen Ruan not long after mother passed away. Wen Ruan felt that there was a hint of mockery in the child's soft voice, but when she looked over, she could not discern anything from the expressionless face. Wen Ruan showed what she thought was her friendliest and most beautiful smile. She nodded at Arba and said, as a junior, Ruan will naturally visit Aunt. Arba glanced at her with an indifferent expression. Grandmother is sick. She's not in a good condition to meet guests. Aunt Wen is considerate. I will pass the message to grandmother. Aunt is sick. As a junior, I should go. Wen Ruan did not expect to be rejected, so she hurriedly said, Who do you think you are? I'll take care of my mother. Arba, take me to my mother. I'm warning you, if anything happens to my mother, I won't let you off. Qiao Wenhuan said with a stern expression. Mr. Zhong, I remember that not just anyone can enter the city center, right? Arba said coldly. That's right. Zhong Yang hastily nodded and said, These people were brought here for questioning because of second young Master Liu. Don't worry, Miss Qiao. I'll take care of their whereabouts. Take care, Miss Qiao. Arba nodded. He picked up the chicken that kept squawking and quickly left. Qiao Wenhuan's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. She chased after Arba and shouted a few times, but the guards of the city lord's estate mercilessly stopped her. The Qiao estate's private residence is ahead, Mr. Zhong said indifferently. Don't enter without the owner's permission. Chapter 156. I'm the Qiao estate's daughter. I'm that little girl's aunt. Ah. Qiao Wenhuan was rudely shoved by the guards and fell into the crowd of Wei family members. What are you doing? Qiao Wenhuan shouted angrily, her pretty face flushing purple. Give them their identity tablets, Zhong Yang casually ordered. Zhong Yang ordered casually, then turned and walked towards the group of people from the Liu clan kneeling at the door. Come with me. Family head Liu felt as if he had been granted amnesty and heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He kicked the groaning second Liu and said, Unfilial son, get up. Later, kowtow to your uncle a few more times. Let's see what kind of trouble you've caused in the estate. If you don't beg for your uncle's forgiveness today, I'll kick you out of the Liu family and let you fend for yourself. Causing trouble in the middle of the night and angrily smashing the city gates, this unfilial son was the one who did all these shameful things. If it weren't for his old face, perhaps their Liu family would have already been kicked out of Shizhou City by the city lord. Second Liu pursed his lips and got up from the ground, feeling wronged. He did not forget to look back at Wen Ruan and smiled obsequiously. Little sister Xiaowan, wait for me. Hey, Dad, what are you doing? Second Liu, whose left ear was grabbed by family head Liu, was in so much pain that his head tilted to the side. He followed family head Liu to the city lord's estate and kept calling out little sister Xiaowan. Coward. What a useless guy. She even had to sacrifice her body and let this coward take advantage of her the entire way. She was really infuriated. Wen Rawan resentfully glared at Second Liu's back before curtsying to a guard from the city lord's estate. She said softly, "Little brother, I'm a relative of that little girl from before. I really want to visit my aunt. Can you make things easy for me?" The guards of the city lord's estate saw that she was beautiful and elegant, unlike Qiao Wenhuan, who shouted and made a ruckus like a village woman without any etiquette. Thus, they had a better impression of Wen Rawan and spoke to her more politely. "Miss, it's not that we want to stop you, but you heard what Miss Qiao said just now. The old madam of the Qiao family is not seeing guests recently, so please don't make things difficult for us." That young guard mysteriously said to Wen Rawan that Miss Xiao Qiao is an honored guest that our city lord ordered to treat well and not offend. Wen Rawan felt gloomy and displeased, but she still put on a gentle smile and nodded obediently. "Then we'll have to trouble you to send us away, little brother." Of course, of course. On the contrary, the guard liked the gentle and docile Wen Rawan very much. He deliberately rummaged through the pile of wooden tablets and handed one to her, saying with a smile, "Although we're all staying in the shanty district, there are also good and bad places to stay. The location of this wooden plaque was one of the better spots in the shed area. When you go to the west of the city, miss, you must be careful." Wen Rawan thanked him on the surface, but she felt disdainful on the inside. So what if he gave her a bamboo tile that corresponded to her location? And it wasn't even in that damned low-class shanty town. She really didn't expect that she, Wen Rawan, would have to live in the shed area. The city lord's estate guard threw a handful of bamboo tablets to Qiao Wenhuan and the others. "These are your identity tablets. Take one from each family. Guards, immediately send them to the west of the city." Qiao Wenhuan immediately kicked one of the tablets and shouted fiercely like a shrew, "What right do you have to make us leave? My mother lives here. I want to find my mother. You don't have the right to make me leave. Mother, mother, mother." Chapter 157. Make them leave immediately. As soon as the head of the bodyguards gave the order, two people immediately came forward and unceremoniously grabbed Qiao Wenhuan, who was struggling and shouting. They carried her all the way out of Pear Blossom Alley. Qiao Wenhuan screamed until her throat was hoarse. She was so angry that sparks could fly out of her eyes. She kept cursing, "Arbor, you cursed little bastard, how dare you treat your aunt like this? You're utterly devoid of conscience and morals. I'll see how you'll die in the future." The city lord's estate's guards were experienced in dealing with this kind of shrew. They directly stuffed a dirty rag into Qiao Wenhuan's mouth, and her screams abruptly stopped. The two of them worked together to drag Qiao Wenhuan outside and threw her onto the donkey cart without the slightest bit of pity for the fairer sex. The city lord's estate's guards pushed the Wei family members onto the donkey cart one after another and pulled the cart toward the west of the city. However, they were more courteous to Wen Rawan. They even specially gave her a gentle pony and let her ride it alone. The Wei family left with sullen faces while cursing at the heavens and earth. Arbor carried the chicken's neck back home and did not pay attention to the farce in front of the city lord's estate. "Caw caw caw caw. You're going to caw again. I'll turn you into a bald chicken and pluck out all your feathers," Arbor threatened coldly, not caring if the chicken understood him or not. Sure enough, the chicken did not dare to caw. It flapped its wings and cawed pitifully. "Heh! What are you dissatisfied with?" Arbor coldly glanced at the chicken. "I'm the one who's embarrassed. Have you ever seen anyone use a summoning talisman to summon a bald chicken? I'm truly the first person since ancient times." Arbor huffed angrily. He got a bit angry just talking about it. "Caw caw caw." A certain chicken flapped its wings indignantly and spouted water all the way. The child unreservedly flicked its head. "If you keep spouting water, I'll twist your head off and kick it like a ball." A certain person felt very miserable. "Child, did your parents know that you're so savage? Do you think you're so great just because you can spray water? I can find a street performer and he can even spit fire." Arbor angrily rebuked the chicken. Then, he felt that he was a little funny. This chicken. Perhaps when it was summoned by him, It also felt extremely helpless and had no choice. I'm telling you, when it's time, go back immediately. The next time I use the summoning talisman, you have to be more careful. Don't come and join in the fun, okay? I'll let it go this time. I forgive you. Let's get along well and part on good terms. After one day, leave quickly and don't look back. She was a great talisman master who had to summon fierce beasts like lions, tigers, bears, leopards, and so on. How could she endure summoning a chicken? As soon as Steward Chang Zai opened the door, he saw his stoic-faced little miss holding a chicken in one hand and muttering non-stop. That scene was indescribably beautiful. Chang Zai's mouth twitched as he opened the door for Arbor and welcomed her in. Miss, Master and Madam said that you haven't eaten breakfast yet. Do you need some now? Arbor shook his head. No need, Butler Chang. I'm going to old Madam's room. Is Shu Niang there? Speaking of Shu Niang, Chang Zai wanted to shed a tear of sympathy for her. Shu Niang was in charge of chores like sweeping the courtyard and was also assigned by the little master to go out and buy things. When she had time, she still had to go to old Madam's room to wait on her. She was as busy as a spinning top every day. Old Madam doesn't need much service. Serve her 3 meals a day and make her a pot of tea to cool down. Arbor carried the chicken and walked as she said indifferently, at this time, it's already good enough to have 3 meals a day. What's there to be so particular about? Chapter 158. The corner of Chang Zai's mouth twitched. He could tell that the young master did not like the old lady very much. Chang Zai respectfully led Arbor to the door of the old lady's room. He gave Shu Niang a look, and the two of them left together. The old lady's leg had not recovered yet. When Arbor threw away the chicken and walked into the room, the old lady was half leaning on the bed. Seeing Arbor walk in, the old lady coughed awkwardly. Jojo is here. Grandmother. Arbor bowed indifferently. Although his expression was cold, old lady Chow could not find any fault with his etiquette. Sit, Jojo. Old lady Chow's face was full of kindness. She wanted to mend the relationship between her and her granddaughter. Old lady Chow saw everything that happened at the city gate of Shizhou City. She finally realized that her granddaughter was very different from before. Her granddaughter seemed to have a lot of power. Even the mayor and the others were polite to her. How could an old lady like her not know how to adapt to the situation? Arbor sat down on the small stool beside the old lady's bed. He took out a family separation document from his sleeve and spread it in front of the old lady. Old lady Chow's eyes twitched. She did not understand what the child was doing. Grandmother, I met a group of people at the street corner just now. They said it was Mrs. Nyo from the Wei family village. Are you familiar with them? Wasn't the Wei family village? Old lady Chow was surprised. That's your aunt's future in-laws. My aunt has already married herself. She's with them now. What? Old lady Chow looked at Arbor in shock. Your aunt is really getting married? Arbor nodded. There's also a girl with the surname Wen. She and my aunt wanted to see you, but I stopped them. That Miss Wen said she's your distant niece. Are you familiar with her? Old lady Chow's forehead twitched. She raised her hand to rub her head and sighed. Child, if you have something to say, just say it. I don't mean anything else. I just want to ask grandmother. Do you want to live with your daughter, son-in-law, and your distant niece? Or do you plan to stay here and live with us? Arbor's face was indifferent as he caressed the separation document. After all, our Chow family has officially separated. I have no obligation to care about the private affairs of other families, let alone Chow Wenhuan, who has married and stayed in the Wei family. Father and mother are kind-hearted. It's only right for them to support grandmother. Arbor looked at the old lady meaningfully. As for the others, our family is not a charity. Old Madam Chow couldn't help but smile bitterly. This child was beating around the bush to force her to make a statement and warn her to know her place. Jojo, don't worry. Grandmother isn't stupid. Why would she interfere with the Wei family's business? As for your little aunt, Sai. Old Lady Qiao was at a loss for words when she recalled how her daughter had pushed her out as a scapegoat. Arba nodded in satisfaction, stood up, bowed, and left. Looking at her granddaughter's resolute figure, Old Lady Qiao suddenly felt a little regretful. She didn't even want to say a single word to her. Was it so easy to mend a broken heart in the past? 2 days later, outside the royal palace's Qianyuqian gate, 3 large carriages of goods were parked. 2 rows of guards stood on the left and right, looking valiant and formidable. The captain of the guards standing at the front held a large red brocade box in his hands and looked straight ahead. "Stop the carriage." A gorgeous carriage stopped outside the Qianyuqian gate. The carriage curtain lifted, and a graceful figure darted out of the carriage, snatching the large red brocade box from the captain's hands. What a dense mystic energy aura. Chapter 159. The guard captain was shocked and dodged backward while holding the brocade box. He raised his scabbard to block the soft, jade-like hand. "Commandery Princess, please stay your hand. This is a gift prepared by His Highness the Crown Prince. Please be careful and don't damage it." "A gift from Brother Crown Prince. Who is it for?" The newcomer was a young girl about 13 years old. She was wearing a long dress embroidered with golden flowers, and her glossy black hair reached her waist. There was an 8-treasure glazed hairpin inserted into her loose black hair. Her skin was creamy, and her face was like a full moon. She was extremely charming. At this moment, her hand was tightly clasped around the guard captain's wrist. Her eyes were sharp as she coldly stared at the other party. "Commandery Princess Huiyan." The guard captain did not appear overly flustered when facing this pampered commandery princess. He only respectfully said, "This subordinate is only responsible for escorting this batch of goods and does not know anything else. Let go. Let this commandery princess see what's inside the box." Commandery Princess Huiyan pursed her lips and coldly stared at the guard captain. "Please forgive this subordinate for not being able to comply." Insolence. Commandery Princess Huiyan was enraged. She raised her willowy eyebrows and glared at him coldly. "He Tian, you, a mere centurion of the Imperial Guard, dare to look down on this commandery princess like this? How should you be punished?" "Commandery Princess, this subordinate does not dare. However, this subordinate has no choice but to obey the king's orders." "Commandery Princess, please make way. This subordinate and his subordinates still need to leave the city and cannot be delayed." He Tian held the box with one hand and crossed his thick arm in front of his chest as he loudly spoke to Commandery Princess Huiyan. "You impudent dog slave. How dare you look down on this commandery princess?" Commandery Princess Huiyan gritted her teeth and cursed as she pulled out a whip from her waist. With a smack, she heavily swung it at He Tian's arm. He Tian was as immovable as a mountain and tightly hugged the brocade box in his arm. His eyes were unperturbed as he looked at the pampered commandery princess and coldly said, "Commandery Princess, this subordinate is following His Highness the Crown Prince's orders. You dog slave, you're using Brother Crown Prince to suppress this commandery princess again." Huiyan didn't wait for him to finish before scolding him. She raised the whip in her hand again, and this time, she didn't hesitate to lash it at Captain He Tian's face. Seeing that the whip was about to land on He Tian's face, He Tian did not dodge or move. A magnetic voice with endless coldness suddenly sounded. "Huiyan, what are you doing?" Commandery Princess Huiyan's whip was raised high in the air, unable to descend. She turned her head and hurriedly put away the whip. She put on a soft and sweet expression and ran up the stairs with a face full of joy. "Brother Crown Prince." She raised her head to look at that faintly discernible white robe. Although His Highness the Crown Prince was standing against the light and his handsome face couldn't be seen clearly, Huiyan didn't know why, but her maiden heart felt like it was about to jump out of her chest, thumping non-stop. "It stinks." Before Commandery Princess Huiyan could come within 2 feet of him, the Crown Prince swiftly raised his leg and very nonchalantly kicked the flying commandery princess down the step. Hidden Flower, the captain of the hidden pavilion, who was standing beside the Crown Prince, was speechless. The ministers who had rushed down the steps to speak with the Crown Prince, Commandery Princess Huiyan rolled down the steps. She originally wanted to steady herself, but for some reason, she tripped and fell flat on her face. The scene was so beautiful that no one could bear to look at it directly. "Why are you still standing here?" The crown prince angrily rebuked He Tian with a sullen face. "Are you an idiot? You don't know how to fight back when someone hits you? You didn't even dodge. Do you think you're made of stone?" The ministers who had rushed down to mediate the fight. "That's a commandery princess, my lord. Is it really okay for you to instigate a lowly centurion under your command to rebel and attack the commandery princess?" Chapter 160. He Tian immediately cupped his hands and admitted his mistake with a serious expression. "Yes, this humble subordinate will immediately depart. The next time I encounter something like this, I definitely won't not retaliate." Hidden Flower's mouth twitched. He freaking felt that the personal guards brought by the royal guard commander, Hui Feng, were similar to him, a bunch of hotheads. The crown prince, who was worried sick about his subordinates, sighed helplessly and turned to look at Hidden Flower. "Why are you still here? This subordinate will go immediately." Hidden Flower's expression turned solemn, and he quickly followed He Tian's group. He had promised His Highness the Crown Prince that he would personally patrol Shijiao City in His Highness' stead. It was not until He Tian's group had rolled far away that Commandery Princess Huiyan, who had fallen flat on her face, finally realized that her brother the Crown Prince had mercilessly kicked her flying. "Commandery Princess," her personal maidservant cautiously called out to the Commandery Princess. This maidservant will help you up. I don't need you to help me." Commandery Princess Huiyan jumped up from the ground. Her well-groomed hair was half disheveled, and she looked very disheveled. The main reason was that she had fallen head first and nibbled on it, and the area around her nose was bleeding. Her appearance was too beautiful, so her personal maidservant did not dare to look straight at her. Go investigate. Investigate clearly. Brother Crown Prince, who did you give gifts to?" Commandery Princess Huiyan was so angry that her lips were trembling, and her heart full of tenderness and sweetness turned into fury. Seeing her personal maidservant's cowardly appearance, Huiyan slapped her and angrily shouted, "Hurry and help this Commandery Princess tidy up my appearance. This Commandery Princess will immediately see Her Majesty the Queen." Her personal maidservant shrunk her neck with a bitter expression. Although she was afraid of Commandery Princess Huiyan, she still could not help but console her. Her Majesty values His Highness the Crown Prince more than her eyes. If such a small matter is brought to Her Majesty, it will only cause her displeasure. Commandery Princess Huiyan angrily stomped her feet. "I don't care. Then I'll go reason with Her Majesty the Queen Dowager." "Commandery Princess, let's return to the estate first." A few maidservants followed behind her and bitterly consoled her. Although the Queen Dowager usually doted on the Commandery Princess, if it was related to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's precious grandson, even 10 Commandery Princesses would not be enough. Commandery Princess Huiyan was so angry that she left the royal palace in tears. When Mo Lian heard the report from the eunuch Xiao 11Z, she didn't even raise her head. She only made a sound of acknowledgement, and the brush in her hand moved slightly before she placed it to the side. The Crown Prince propped up his chin with one hand and tilted his head to look at the table. This continued until Xiao 11Z cautiously called out, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, the 9th and 10th princesses have arrived." "Oh." The Crown Prince moved his elbow and raised his head. His gaze fell on the door. "Go ahead." The 9th princess and the 10th princess were both born from concubine Shi. One was 8 years old and the other was 7 years old. Their ages weren't too far apart and they were both cute and delicate. When the two children were led into the Eastern Palace by their wet nurses, they were very nervous. Their mother's exhortations kept echoing in their ears, "When you go to the Eastern Palace, you must be courteous and respectful to the Crown Prince. You must do everything possible to please the Crown Prince. You must not let the Crown Prince dislike you. Inks now. Molly. Greetings to the Crown Prince." The two of them both crouched and saluted. They were young, but they had learned proper etiquette deep into their bones. Their every move was very standard, as if they were puppets carved from the same mold. Mo Lian frowned. She only glanced at her 2 younger sisters before losing interest. Chapter 161. They really were completely different children. The Crown Prince was a bit melancholy. So it wasn't that he changed his personality and liked to be close to children. Instead, the Crown Prince no longer had any interest in looking at his 2 younger sisters. He waved his hand, and Xiao 11Z went forward to whisper something to the 2 wet nurses accompanying them. The wet nurses of the 2 princesses were stunned for a moment before they immediately nodded. They each held the 9th and 10th princesses' small hands and led them out of the Eastern Palace. From beginning to end, the 2 little princesses didn't know what had happened. Why did their royal brother, the Crown Prince, only glance at them and let them leave without saying anything? After leaving the Eastern Palace, the 10th princess burst into tears and asked timidly while sobbing, "Wet nurse, did we make royal brother Crown Prince angry?" The 10th princess's wet nurse dotingly hugged the child and repeatedly said, "No, no, His Highness the Crown Prince is busy with work, so he let us leave first." The 10th princess asked pitifully with teary eyes, "Really? Then why didn't royal brother say anything to us? Does he not like us?" The wet nurse repeatedly nodded and then hurriedly shook her head. "No, no, don't worry, princess. I will explain to Her Highness concubine She. Both princesses are so polite and considerate, so how could His Highness the Crown Prince not like you?" Xiao 11Z, who had sent them out, helplessly watched as the wet nurse led the 2 princesses away. He shook his head and returned to the Eastern Palace. "Sigh, I don't know what's wrong with that lord at home again, but he suddenly said that he wanted to see his 2 royal sisters. In the end, he sent them away without saying anything after they came. Crown Prince, you'll really scare little children if you act so recklessly." When Xiao 11Z returned to the room, he immediately saw his master maintaining the same posture of propping up his chin with his hand and staring motionlessly at the table. He's been standing there in a daze for at least 15 minutes. Xiao 11Z trotted to the Crown Prince's side and wanted to take a look at the table out of curiosity. However, he saw the Crown Prince reach out 2 fingers to pick up the thin drawing paper and raise it high. Xiao 11Z didn't even see a strand of hair. On the drawing paper was a little girl with a stoic face. She was expressionlessly looking at him. Her clear black and white eyes were like 2 cold pools. If one wasn't careful, they could suck in one's soul remembrance. The little girl in the painting was held above her head by 2 hands. If he dared to do this in real life, she would definitely beat him until his face was swollen. The Crown Prince stared at the painting for a long time and muttered to himself, "You look at me expressionlessly all day long, probably because you are lazy. Fine. Laugh. Let's go." Who's looking at His Highness expressionlessly? Who dares to be so rude in front of His Highness that he can't even be bothered to smile? Xiao 11Z immediately jumped out and voiced his doubts. Who was so fearless as to treat their master like this? When had their master's temper ever been so good? "I can't kill her." The Crown Prince glanced at his personal eunuch and thought, "So stupid. Why did I take him in?" "Your Highness." The 2 princesses left the Eastern Palace with apprehension. They were very sad. Xiao 11Z hurriedly came forward and reported, "I'm afraid that when I return, I won't be able to escape concubine She's scolding." The Crown Prince said nothing. Xiao 11Z snuck a glance at the Crown Prince and cleared his throat before asking, "Why did your Highness chase the 2 princesses away without saying a word?" Saying a few words of comfort was better than not saying anything at all, right? "Because." The Crown Prince smoothed out the drawing paper in his hand and gently folded it. He then stood up and slowly said, "They're not as cute as her at all." Chapter 162. The vassal king of Annan's estate. A series of messy smashing noises came from Commandery Princess Huiyan's boudoir, and it had not stopped for an hour. Commandery Princess, Commandery Princess. Guard Nyan has returned. Her personal maidservant tremblingly closed the door and was almost hit in the head by a teacup thrown at her. She rolled on the floor in a panic and repeatedly kowtowed to beg for mercy. Idiot, hurry up and call him in. Commandery Princess Huiyan angrily sat down on the round-backed chair and fiercely slammed the table. A tanned young man who looked like a farmer strode in and cupped his hands in salute. Commandery Princess. This subordinate has investigated and found that the caravan is heading toward Shizhou City. What kind of place is Shizhou City? The Commandery Princess frowned. Shizhou City is quite far from the royal capital. It's a small city. Why did Brother Crown Prince send people there? Huiyan muttered to herself. This subordinate has also investigated and found that the Crown Prince ordered people to wantonly purchase a lot of items for young ladies in the city these past 2 days. Women. Huiyan's voice rose an octave before she heavily slammed the table. She gritted her teeth and said, "What a little bitch. When did His Highness the Crown Prince get seduced by a little bitch without her knowledge? Nyan Kuei, I want you to immediately take 2 people and follow them. Once you reach Shizhou City, investigate that bitch's origins." Commandery Princess Huiyan's voice was as cold as ice. Yes, Commandery Princess. Nyan Kuei nodded. Should we capture her? No need. Huiyan gritted her teeth and pushed a small box in front of Nyan Kuei. Just make that little bitch consume this. Huiyan's lips tugged into a malicious smile. I want that bitch to beg for death. Since she dared to steal Brother Crown Prince's favor from her, the Golden Commandery Princess Huiyan, then she would make that bitch suffer for the rest of her life. Your Highness. Huifeng lightly leaped and landed outside the pavilion before saluting. The Crown Prince was sitting next to the railing in a leisurely and elegant manner. His slender fingers pinched a few pieces of pastry powder and tossed them into the pool. Commandery Princess Huiyan sent 3 royal guards to Shizhou City. One of them is a 7th-layer body-tempering cultivator. Huifeng's words caused the Crown Prince's fingers to pause. A trace of mockery flashed in the depths of the Crown Prince's eyes. His voice was indifferent as he said, "Let her be. You'll die if you underestimate baby Qiao." His mood was inexplicably excited. Darling Qiao should be quite bored after settling down in Shizhou City, so it would be good for her to practice her skills with these 3 idiots. Your Highness, the Great King has summoned you. Read it. The Crown Prince flicked his sleeves, his voice indifferent. The Great King decreed, for the past few days, the zombies have been wreaking havoc in the royal city, causing the people to be unable to make a living and suffering. This lonely one is deeply worried and unable to sleep at night. Today, I've decided to go to Mount Hong to pray for the people and set off immediately. He promoted the Crown Prince to be a regent and to handle the daily affairs of the state. The afternoon breeze caressed the Crown Prince's face. Although the weather was very hot, the eunuch who delivered the edict felt waves of cold air. After reading the edict, he stood there stiffly, not daring to move. The Crown Prince raised his eyebrows with a faint smile. Who else did the Great King bring with him? Although the Crown Prince didn't fly into a rage, he could still feel his terrifying rage. The edict eunuch said with trepidation, "The Great King brought Consort Zheng and noble lady He Chem. And. The edict eunuch rattled off the names of several beauties. The Crown Prince nodded, his eyes cold and cheerless. You may withdraw. The edict eunuch wiped his sweat and hurried away. He felt a chill run down his spine. The Great King left behind a pile of mess and ran off like this. Will Your Highness the Crown Prince really allow you to peacefully enjoy a beautiful holiday? Isn't it a bit too monotonous with only beauties? The Crown Prince narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself, throw a few zombies over and let the Great King have some liveliness over there. Huifeng. The Great King, please take care of yourself. Shizhou City. After Darling Qiao finished absorbing the last magnetite, she looked up at the darkening sky outside the window. Miss, there's a youth from Daybreak Sect who calls himself Duan Yu requesting an audience. Why did Duan Yu come here? Chapter 163. A camphor tree was planted outside the window, and several kingfishers perched on its branches, chirping from time to time. The sky outside the window had completely darkened. Arbor threw away the last magnetite in her hand and sighed. The mystic energy she could absorb from 500 low-grade magnetite was less than 1/10 of it. Most of it went into the sapling's mouth. This was truly too much of a scam. At this rate, when would she be able to advance into the ranks of level 5 mystic cultivators? Arbor looked up outside the window when she heard 2 knocks on the door. Miss, a youth from the Daybreak sect, Duan Yu, is requesting an audience. Steward Chang Zai stood behind the door, not daring to speak too loudly. Xiao Mu jumped down from the bed and opened the door. She walked to the steward with her little paws behind her back. What is he doing here? Miss, isn't this youth your friend? Chang Zai was surprised. That youth came to the door with a chuckle and claimed to be little Miss's friend. He thought the youth and his little miss were acquaintances. Arbor's footsteps paused, and her gaze was icy. Her childish voice should have been soft, but it carried an inexplicable murderous aura. I've never had any friends. The steward's heart trembled, and he took a step back and bowed. This old servant understands. Arbor pattered toward the side hall. Although she did not speak the entire way, the steward inexplicably sensed the low pressure coming from the little master. It was not until she entered the hall and her gaze landed on the elegantly seated youth drinking tea that Xiao Mu coldly said, "In the future, don't casually let in unimportant people." Duan Yu was originally drinking tea without restraint, but his hand froze when he heard the child's retort. Why was this child so unadorable? Hey, is this the attitude you should have toward a friend? Duan Yu angrily threw the teacup on the table and jumped up from the chair. No matter what, we're friends who have gone through thick and thin together, through fire and water, through life and death together. I don't have any friends. Xiao Mu frowned and looked at him strangely. Duan Yu immediately exploded. You, what kind of gaze and attitude is that? You. What did you say? What do you mean by no friends? I thought that after going through a life and death situation together, we should be good friends who can go through thick and thin together, right? He was infuriated. How could there be such an evil child in this world? When she didn't speak, she looked obedient and cute. She was soft and cute. The moment she opened her mouth, he wanted to kill her. No friends. The child bluntly retorted him with 3 words, which angered Duan Yu so much that he jumped up and wanted to run out the door. He didn't want to talk to her anymore. This facial paralysis, this ice-cold wooden doll, this little bastard. He was really looking for trouble. That was why he rushed here to be scolded by her. The little fellow pattered over to the seat of honor and jumped up, looking coldly at the youth standing in front of him. The little guy was sitting on the round-backed chair. He was only half the size of the chair. He curled up into a soft ball on the chair with his little arms and legs slightly raised. For a split second, Duan Yu suddenly wanted to laugh. Why did he get angry with a little kid? Duan Yu decisively returned to his seat and looked at the child face to face. Just because we didn't have any friends before doesn't mean we won't have any in the future. From today onward, we are friends. Tomorrow, the Mystic Cultivator Association will send someone to guide the children in the city and open their mystic meridians. Jojo, let's go take a look together. Chapter 164. Not interested. The child's words were like a boulder that forcefully suppressed Duan Yu's enthusiasm. How could there be such a heartless and emotionless child in this world? Normally, when a child heard someone's invitation to go out and play, wouldn't they happily agree to it? What kind of mutant was this child? How could she be so loathsome? Jojo. Second Uncle Qiao suddenly walked in excitedly. Didn't this little brother say earlier that an instructor from the Mystic Cultivator Association will come tomorrow to guide the children in the city to open their mystic meridians? Arbor glanced at Xiao Hu was hiding behind Second Uncle. That child's round head was lowered and he kept rubbing the corner of his clothes, looking uneasy and uneasy. Yes. Arba jumped down from the chair and pattered to Xiao Hu's side. She grabbed his hand. Brother Xiao Hu, I'll accompany you to find an instructor to open your mystic meridians tomorrow. Don't worry, it doesn't matter if you succeed or not. We're just going to try, so don't put too much pressure on yourself. Xiao Hu looked up at Arba pitifully. Sister, I've already tried for 3 years, but I haven't succeeded in opening my mystic meridians. What's wrong with that? Some people try 8 to 10 times in a row before succeeding. You've only tried 3 times, so it's nothing. Maybe we'll succeed this time. Arba comforted Xiao Hu by patting his shoulder. Really? Xiao Hu's eyes brightened. Duan Yu looked at the child with a stifled expression. Why was she so cold and heartless when he spoke to her? It was as if she kept him at arm's length. However, the child even learned how to comfort that thick-headed brat. Then I'll come pick you up tomorrow morning. Seeing that the child was about to turn around and refuse, Duan Yu quickly said, I can take you through a special passage. There's no need to line up. The child ran to his side with small steps, raised his head and waved at him. So cute. She's a baby when she doesn't speak. Duan Yu bent down in surprise, and a strand of hair brushed past his face. What do you want to say to me? Slap. A talisman was slapped on the youth's forehead. Sleep. Second Uncle Xiao. Duan Yu. Xiao Hu said, Sister, you're amazing. This is the demon suppression talisman, isn't it? Naughty child. You're thinking too much, okay? Those who go around with fake talismans and say that there are demons causing trouble in your house are all fake Daoist priests who cheat you of your money. You're the demon, your whole family are monsters. The youth's breath was stuck in his chest. After a long while, the young man stretched out 2 fair fingers and tore off the talisman that was floating on his forehead. Facing the child's bright and watery eyes, the youth was speechless for a moment. This is a new toy for children. Darling Xiao sighed and crossed the tall threshold with her hands behind her back like an old man. As she walked, she muttered to herself, I didn't expect that such a weakling would have a higher cultivation than me. How helpless. Any random cat or dog was more powerful than her. It was all the little tree's fault for always fighting with her. Capital. Origin. Arba looked up at the sky. If the opponent was 1 rank higher than her, they would be immune to the sleeping talisman's effects. Duan Yu stiffly stood behind the threshold and stretched out his hand to call back that strange child. Come back and tell me, who's the weakling? Early the next morning after Arba freshened up, she headed straight for the entrance. As expected, Duan Yu was waiting outside the Qiao estate. When he saw her step out, he cheerfully greeted her, Jojo, good morning. Chapter 165. One does not hit a smiling person, so Xiao Mu expressionlessly nodded her small head at him. Duan Yu's smile was brighter than a flower. Let's go, Jojo. Get on the carriage. Today, not only did the Mystic Cultivator Association send people, but the 3 sects also sent people. Arba got on the carriage with a taut face and waited solemnly. Xiao Hu anxiously glanced at his sister, but when he saw that she had no intention of speaking, he also shut his mouth. The carriage started rolling and headed toward the western part of the city where the crowd was gathered. Many city citizens had gathered at the plaza on the western part of the city early in the morning after hearing the news. They lined up with their families and inquired about the news with each other. They never dreamed that the Mystic Cultivator Association would come today to try to activate the children's mystic meridians. If their children could successfully activate their mystic meridians and become mystic cultivators, they would definitely be able to change their current impoverished situation. They would no longer need to live in this tiny shanty town in the western part of the city. Life in the shanty town was difficult and resources were scarce, so theft and robbery often occurred. Whoever had the biggest fist was the law. 2 days ago, a young couple was unlucky enough to be robbed when they entered the shanty town. The only food they had in their bags was also plundered. Now, their lives were extremely miserable and they had to beg everywhere for a living. The chaotic western part of the city originally housed many people from other villages and towns. Because the Mystic Cultivator Association had set this place as the location for the children's test, the city lord sent people to chase away the refugees on the square and clean it up before the sun even rose. Hence, when Arba's carriage arrived, the road was basically unobstructed. As the carriage rolled past the Main Street Plaza, Xiao Hu lifted the curtain to take a look. The western part of the city isn't as chaotic as imagined. It's just a little tidying up because there are guests. Arba didn't need to look to know what kind of scene this place usually was. Earlier, at Shijiao City's city gate, when the young couple refused to hand over their resources and came to live in the shanty town for free with a low-class sign, Mr. Zhong's meaningful gaze made it clear to Arba that life in the shanty town might not be easy. In this kind of place where the strong preyed on the weak, a young couple with food would be robbed in a matter of minutes. Therefore, even if they didn't hand over their supplies, they wouldn't be able to keep their belongings. If they had handed it over at that time, they might have been able to exchange it for an ordinary residence in the north or south of the city. What the couple did was absolutely stupid, but Mr. Zhong had no obligation to remind them. Arba walked down from the carriage, and immediately countless gazes gathered on her. The child wore a moon-white shirt, and his stoic face was expressionless. Although she didn't have any accessories on her body, she still gave people an indescribable feeling of nobility. Yo, Xiao Hu, you've come to trigger your meridians again. As expected, you come every year without fail. Unfortunately, it's not of much use. My mother said that you're a good-for-nothing and that you'll never become a mystic cultivator in this lifetime. A child's voice rudely entered Arba's ears, causing her to involuntarily knit her brows. Arba's cold gaze shot over and saw that it was an 8 or 9-year-old child. He wore a white robe in the style of the Daybreak sect, and the unique circular emblem of the Daybreak sect was embroidered on his chest. Who are you? Arba felt that the little boy in front of him was somewhat familiar. Younger sister, Hi's second aunt's son, Qiao Tsong. Second aunt? Arba's I don't know expression made Qiao Tsong's heart burn with anger. Are you an idiot? Qiao Tsong pointed at Arba and cursed, you don't even recognize your second aunt, my mother? Chapter 166. Arba's eyes chilled to the extreme. Without another word, she stepped forward and kicked Qiao Tsong in the stomach. Qiao Tsong's eyes widened as he was sent flying by the little girl's kick. He crashed into the back of the crowd, eliciting screams in a small area. Duan Yu followed behind her, but he simply couldn't stop her. He angrily flung his sleeves. Why did Daybreak sect only accept idiots with bad brains? Why did they provoke the little girl when they didn't have the ability? If this wasn't seeking death, then what was? War. Qiao Tsong, who was sent flying, felt a terrible pain in his stomach, and he opened his mouth wide to cry. Son. A middle-aged woman darted out of the crowd and rushed toward Qiao Tsong. Arba glanced at the woman and pondered for a moment before recalling this second aunt. Wasn't she Madame Nei Li, who once came to steal her supplies? So it was this outrageous second aunt. Qiao Yingchun followed behind Madame Nei Li and coyly jogged over. When she looked up and saw Arba, her eyes widened. Mom, it's her. That little bitch who stole our clothes and jewelry is here. Hurry and teach her a lesson. You scoundrel. Madame Nei Li turned to point at Arba and angrily rebuked, you still dare to appear in front of us? Where's your mom? Tell Wei Ziqin to come out. I want to have a good talk with her. Do you know how to teach your daughter? What kind of thing have you raised? Stealing things and hitting her older brother without any etiquette or rules. Truly a little bastard. With a dark expression, Arba took out an identity tablet with a flip of his hand and flashed it at the dumbfounded guards of the city lord's estate. Capture her. The words superior were carved on the back of the tablet. This was a pampered guest from the city center. The guards' expressions turned solemn, and they immediately rushed toward the jabbering Madame Nei Li. They grabbed her arms behind her back and shoved her in front of Arba. Slap her until I'm satisfied, Arba coldly ordered, his soft childish voice devoid of any emotion. A guard slapped Madame Nayli's face. Slap. For a moment, the square was silent. Even the 3 mentors of the Mystic Cultivator Association who were sitting in front of the long table and giving guidance tests to the children in line stood up and looked at the commotion with confusion. Pa. Slap. She slapped Madame Li's face repeatedly. Madame Li's hands were clamped behind her back. At first, she could still struggle and curse at Arba. After a dozen or so slaps, his cheeks began to feel numb, and he couldn't even open his mouth. Xiao Tsong was furious. A layer of mystic energy covered his fist as he angrily flew towards Arba and swung his fist at her face. Slut. Go to hell. You overestimate yourself. Xiao Mu gripped his fist with a backhand. Xiao Tsong widened his eyes in shock. He knew very well how fast he had rushed over, but that little girl, who was 2 years younger than him, had actually grabbed his fist in an instant. What's so great about being a mystic? Could a mystic cultivator disregard other people's life and death? A level 1 mystic cultivator's eyes were as high as the sky. You're a good-for-nothing through and through. The little girl's voice was monotonous, but everyone present could hear the chill in her voice. Crack. Outh. The pain from his wrist being broken made Xiao Tsong, this child, unable to resist opening his mouth and howling. Do mystic cultivators also know how to cry? The little girl's lips curled up mockingly. When she said this, she gave people a feeling of endless coldness. Chapter 167. Then cry even louder. Arba flung Xiao Tsong away. The latter rolled to Xiao Yingchuan's side with a loud crash. It startled Xiao Yingchun so much that she jumped to the side like a grasshopper and let out a piercing shriek. Shut up, Arba reprimanded rudely. Xiao Yingchuan's eyes widened in horror and she instantly restrained her voice. Her body trembled uncontrollably, and she reflexively covered her mouth. Why did she feel that this child was so scary? Stop, Xiao Mu said faintly and walked to Madame Nayli with small steps. Xiao Mu raised her head slightly and looked at her swollen cheeks and mouth with a cold glint in her eyes. Your son wants to kill me. He should be dead already. What do you want to do? Li Madame's mouth hurt, and she couldn't even speak clearly. She felt a chill run down her spine, as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. She suddenly felt a bit of regret. Why did she provoke this child? Back in Xiaotu village, she clearly knew that although this child was young, he wasn't to be trifled with. I'll spare his life for father's sake. Arba coldly glanced at Li Madame. Just this once. I won't. Before he could finish speaking, Xiao Tsong suddenly let out an agitated cry. Master, master, master. Xiao Tsong suddenly pounced on a figure walking quickly toward them and bawled loudly. He pointed at Arba with resentment and anger. She wants to kill me. This little bitch wants to kill me. Master, master, save me. Don't panic, disciple. The newcomer was middle-aged and wore Daybreak Sect's uniform. He looked toward Arba with a shrewd gaze. You're so daring, child. What's your background? Tell me your name. Arba raised a brow and sneered rudely. I hit the young one, and the old one jumps out to shout. You're really shameless. You little rascal, speaking so rudely. You really need someone to teach you a lesson, the middle-aged man said angrily with a dark expression. You want to teach me a lesson? Arba expressionlessly swept a glance over his square face. His voice rose slightly with a hint of viciousness. You! Uncle Master Bai. You aren't her match. Hurry and retreat. Duan Yu really wanted to kill these worrisome disciples. Did they think that he still had enough profound stones to pay those expensive ransoms when they were rushing to die in front of the little girl? Duan Yu, you are the disciple of our Daybreak Sect's sect master, the #1 person in the sect's younger generation. How can you stand by and do nothing when you see your little junior brother being humiliated? Uncle Master Bai turned his head and angrily rebuked Duanyu with an "I'm very disappointed" expression. No, Uncle Master Bai, this matter. Don't talk too much. Little girl, let me have a taste of your strength. You have to know that there's always someone better than you. You'll suffer losses in the future if you don't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. Boom. Arbor landed a flying kick in front of Uncle Master Bai. Immediately, he stomped a pit on the ground, and cracks began to appear from the middle, spreading outwards like a spider web. Uncle Master Bai's pupils contracted. The strength of this kick was beyond his expectations. At the same time, it was also beyond everyone's expectations. It was the layman who watched the show, while the expert watched the knack. The three mentors from the Mystic Cultivator Association all sucked in a cold breath as they watched the rapidly moving little person in the field with bright eyes. After Arbor's flying kick, he didn't give Uncle Master Bai a chance to react. He had already leaped up and swiftly arrived in front of him. Chapter 168. Uncle Master Bai had yet to recover from his shock. Arbor's fist, which was covered in dense mystic energy, arrived in front of him with a whoosh. Bam! All of a sudden, Uncle Master Bai felt a sharp pain on the left side of his face. He could even hear a cracking sound coming from his cheekbone. Uncle Master Bai was struck by an old fist and was forced to take a few steps back. He bared his teeth and howled in pain. There were many gasps in the square, mixed with a few cries of surprise. Heavens! This child's seemingly delicate and light punch actually forced an Uncle Master from Daybreak sect to retreat so many steps. The sharp-eyed spectators clearly saw Uncle Master Bai's left cheek swelling at a visible speed, turning into a big red bun. It was evident how powerful that punch was. Master! Xiao Tsong watched in shock as his master was defeated in disbelief. In his opinion, Master simply did not need to lift half a finger to easily crush a small bug like Xiaomu to death. However, the reality was so disappointing. Not to mention Xiao Tsong, even Uncle Master Bai himself found it unbelievable. He could only say sheepishly, "Damn girl, I was too careless just now, so you succeeded. Don't be too pleased with yourself." Before he could finish speaking, he heard high-pitched screams from the crowd behind him. What was going on? Uncle Master Bai turned around and saw a small figure leaping high into the air. She was holding a pitch-black ferule, which glowed with an inky light under the morning light. It was instantly eye-catching. The little girl was clearly in front of him just now, so when did she move behind him? Wasn't this speed a little too slap? The ferule fell and ruthlessly smacked Uncle Master Bai's head. Duanyu, who was standing on the side with his hands clasped together, silently twitched his mouth. Uncle Master Bai only felt a line of blood slide down his forehead. He dazedly reached out to touch it and found that it was sticky. Sure enough, blood was gushing out. His expression instantly turned sinister, and he angrily roared at Arbor, "Damn girl, you're courting death." How could he still maintain that old face of his? How could Uncle Master Bai embarrass himself in front of so many commoners and people from the Mystic Cultivator Association? Immediately, he pressed his palms together and poured all of his profound energy into his palms. His eyes were filled with anger as he charged towards Arbor. Arbor did not dodge. When he saw Uncle Master Bai charging towards him with all his might, his eyes lit up. With a stomp on the ground, the little fellow's tiny body shot towards Uncle Master Bai like an arrow released from a bow. "Is this what you want?" Instead of dodging, he faced the attack head-on. Everyone present held their breaths and stared at the two of them without blinking. Closer, closer, the distance was getting closer and closer. Uncle Master Bai suddenly felt immense pressure. He slowed down his pace. On the other hand, The little girl did not hesitate at all. Like a waterfall, she charged straight towards Uncle Master Bai. Xiao Tsong clenched his fists nervously, not realizing that his palms were covered in cold sweat. Whoosh! Uncle Master Bai bellowed. A thick mystic light exploded from his palms and surged toward the little girl. In the blink of an eye, the little girl's entire body was covered in dense mystic energy. It was as if she was immersed in the mystic light as she charged straight into Uncle Master Bai's mystic light. An earth-shattering boom erupted, shocking everyone in the plaza and causing them to retreat like a receding tide. I'll send the 2 chapters at 7:30 p.m. in advance today. Because the author is going to chop off his hands tonight. Mwahaha. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.